address the chair, not privately.
Mr. Cusack.
One of your last acts, would you lead us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Zimbo, would you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Brown. Here. Mr. Kuzic.
Present.
Mr. Giovanni.
Here.
Mr. Gofredo.
Here.
Mr. Heckman.
Here.
Mr. Lott. Mr. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Here.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Here.
All present except Mr. Lott.
Approval of the minutes for November 2nd, November 1st, and November 8th budget hearing. Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Courtesy of the floor. Ethel Habrel? Ethan Habrel, sorry, sir. I'll struggle tonight.
I'm here to talk about the election integrity. I heard so many various complaints, so many things wrong. The printed ballots were not correct here and there. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. This is what I'm hearing. And I've heard in my own poll that I was at. Something seriously needs to be done. I'm looking at it like this. You people are the boss. You control what's going on there. My opinion, somebody seriously needs to be fired. Anybody that, in my opinion, certifies this election needs to be fired because it's so messed up and so bad. We need to go back to a paper ballot. If a contractor was involved, don't pay him, sue him. I worked in business, I worked in management. I's dotted, T's crossed. $750,000 a day went through my department in computer operations. That's where I really stand on that. And like I said, you people are the boss. You can take action and get this thing straightened up. We need to go to a paper ballot on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly Hernandez? State your name, you have 5 minutes.
Beverly Hernandez, Beverlyhernandez. I'm here for the same reason. I spent a long time in Nancy Arrow's office on election day. I made 100 phone calls to outstanding mail-in ballots, people who held ballots. I found many of those numbers are wrong. They've moved or died. So the voter mail list is bad. Some people told me they ordered ballots, they didn't get them. Some people told me they sent in their ballots and they never got confirmation. That's just the beginning of problems. And of course, we heard about what happened with the glitches in the machines all over the county. This is totally unacceptable. The county is in charge of the elections. The state makes recommendations. They do guidelines. All of you are responsible for the elections. I don't see how this election can be certified. I don't begin to see how this can be certified with what happened. I too think somebody should be fired. I'm not exactly sure who, but somebody should be fired for this. How can we begin to trust the election process? I'm hearing people say they're just not going to vote again. They just give up. They don't trust the system. They think it's rigged. We're the laughing stock of the nation. We made national news. People were turned away. There weren't enough paper ballots at the polls. There were other problems. There were other problems that maybe should have fallen on the party. But I can't tell you. I can't tell you how depressed and then angry I was over this whole thing. I'm really involved politically. I really want to follow the given process for making changes. I worked very, very hard for Nancy Arrow. And I mean, I just can't begin to believe the results of that election. The other thing I think is the mail-in, and we will discuss this at the voter voter board next Tuesday. A lot of us will be coming and talking. It's on your shoulders. You're the ones who have the authority and the power to make changes here. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Geisinger. State your name, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Glenn Geisinger, 1701 Rolling Meadows Drive in Pen Argyl. I thank this august body. Having sat on the dais myself previously, I understand the responsibilities that you have as the governing body of Northampton County. By virtue of that power and authority, you hold the purse strings and you hold the right to hold the county executive responsible for the execution of his actions. This past Tuesday's election, I should say the election of November 7th, this 2 Tuesdays ago, unfortunately left a lot of issues that have occurred before. This is the second time that these ESS machines have failed us. We are coming into perhaps one of the most critical elections in 2024. We cannot have this same kind of failure again. I beseech you to utilize your authority to move forward, to look at a new voting system, to ensure that these kind of errors do not occur again, to ensure that we have a system where when people come to the polls, the ballot that is cast on the machine is the one that they see on the card. This doesn't seem like a very difficult task. The audit trail of that card is essential to being able to ensure that the voters' intentions were recorded properly. In 2019, we were told what is on the card is what's recorded. Don't worry about it. If the electronic device has a little bit of a glitch, not a problem. We've got the card. In 2023, we're being told the electronic machine is what's okay. Please ignore the card. Which is it? Again, I've sat in your seat. I know what you can and cannot do. But I do know you hold the purse strings. This contract, whatever way you need to, needs to be gotten out of, and you need to move forward with a new voting system so that next year, when the people of Northampton County, and this is not a partisan issue, it's not Republican, Democrat, Independent, this is about voter integrity and civil rights. When people walk into that ballot booth, they need to be able to know that the vote that they cast for the person that they want is properly recorded and is assured to be counted effectively in that election. I thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else who would like to address council at this time? Council? Nobody in council have anything to say? All right.
Oh, did you? Not at this time.
No one does? Okay. County exec, Mr. McClure.
Good evening, council. First, on behalf of the County of Northampton, I would like to personally apologize to any voter who suffered any inconvenience or worse on Election Day. Our first priority is to ensure fair, accurate, and legal elections. We are extremely confident that we have delivered on that priority, with your vote counted exactly as you intended. As soon as the Northampton County Elections Office became aware of the issue, working with our vendor, ES&S, and the election office, identified the problem, which was a printer-only issue that would not affect the tabulation. The elections office followed guidance from the Pennsylvania Department of State and obtained a court order to inform the public of the issue. The court order allowed each precinct to go back to voting on the machine because it was understood that votes would tabulate correctly at the end of the election. ES&S has identified and accepted responsibility for their clerical error, as they are the ones who program our elections and assist with testing. Every year following the certification of votes, an audit is conducted to ensure that elections are 100% accurate. Thus far, we have not had any issue with our elections after the audit. This year's audit will take place on Friday, November 24th, 2023, at 10 a.m. We expect the audit results will not change, as this was a printer issue, not a tabulation issue. Northampton County is working diligently to evaluate our processes and implement stronger controls for our logic and accuracy testing. I am happy to stand here and answer your questions, but I think it is absolutely incumbent upon us to start making a detailed record tonight about what did and did not happen in this election. I think, some of the folks who spoke at courtesy of the floor spoke to people having confidence in the election, and I agree with that. And I think one of the ways to begin going about doing that is understanding precisely what happened. So I have a representative from ES&S here who will explain to you what happened. They'll explain to you what changes they are making, what they have planned to make so that this particular problem does not occur again in the future, and to strengthen our logic and accuracy testing, and more important, to answer your questions. So with that in mind, they'll also appear at the Election Commission meeting. But with that in mind, I'm going to ask ES&S to come up and address the issue.
Mr. McClure, you
Sure.
willing to answer some questions?
Oh, I'll be happy to, but let him.
No, I just wanted to know your.
Oh, no, I'll be back. I'm not. Goodbye.
Please state your name and
Absolutely.
who you represent.
My name is Adam Carbolito. I'm Vice President at Election Systems and Software. I can spell that if you guys want. ADAMCARBULLIDO. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come before you today and the opportunity to apologize to everyone in Northampton County for the mistakes that were made that led up to last week's election. The issue originated with a mistake that was made by ES&S in the labeling of the contest title verbiage, which is the verbiage that's printed on cards and reports. The error was identified early on election day, and we immediately began our inspection of the issue. Upon inspection, we found exactly what I said. The labeling of what is printed on the card was incorrect, as well as what prints on reports. So to be clear, what the voters saw on the screen was correct. The contest and the candidates were correct. The selections they made appeared in the review screen correctly. The selections they made for those contests also printed correctly on the cards and tabulated correctly in the system. The mistake and the error was simply the contest verbiage, the contest title verbiage. And I'll give you an example of why that comes into play. So in an election, you may have a contest with a really long title. I wrote one down here: Northern Public Library Executive Chairman of the Board, District 7, Ward 3. If you have a long title like that, and you may, when the voter goes to vote, you want them to see what that full title is. But when it prints on a report in a small space, you may need to abbreviate that. You may need to say something like Northern Library Chairman D7W3, so that it can fit in the paper but still be understood. So what happened in this case was the label, the kind of abbreviated label that was to print on the cards and the reports, was entered incorrectly. And what printed on them ended up being wrong. We were able to adjust the contest title verbiage in the reports, and ultimately we were able to tabulate accurately and report results accurately. Going forward, ES&S is implementing a number of steps that we'll be taking to ensure that these mistakes don't occur again. First and foremost, we'll be implementing a detailed protocol within our quality check program that requires a visual inspection of express vote printed cards compared against the approved county ballot language. Second of all, we'll be providing those express vote printed cards to each of our counties, including Northampton. That'll allow them to more easily proof the cards, to identify any label mismatches that may have occurred. Furthermore, we'll be providing what we call a table view report, and this is a report that includes all of the elements that are included in the election, things like contest titles, candidate names, all those different elements that'll allow the county and ES&S to easily proof and effectively proof and identify any potential labeling errors that could have occurred. And then finally, we'll be modifying our pre-election logic and accuracy testing procedures to include steps to verify the labeling on the cards and on the paper ballots to make sure that we don't have any mismatches. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to apologize to everyone in Northampton County. Humans do make mistakes, but we're here and committed to working with Northampton County to make sure these mistakes never occur again. Thank you.
Before you go away, there's going to be questions from members of the council. I can see them chomping at the bit. So before we do that, why wasn't this tested before we put it out there?
Yeah, the system was tested before it was put out there. Unfortunately,
By whom? John, will you let him answer? And I will address you when he answers this question. I'll let you talk to him.
Yeah, the system was tested by ES&S and Northampton County officials in partnership prior to the election. The procedures that we used during the pre-election testing, unfortunately, did not have steps that caught this particular issue.
Okay.
By whom? I'd like to reiterate, by whom?
Mr. Kuzak.
People there.
Yeah, there were a number of ES&S staffers as well as some representatives from the county.
The names of them?
Names of,
County officials that were there during the testing, any ES&S, what were their
JP, did you
positions?
read it? Your mic on?
Their positions, their titles, from our county, from your company, specific people.
yeah, I don't have the
Do you have
specific
that
names.
information?
I don't have the specific names, and given the current climate in elections, we're very remiss to single out individual election workers in a public forum.
Sir, you are holding elections. Everything you do is public. I'm not sure you understand. Please don't.
Don't,
ladies,
please don't,
clapping.
don't.
There is no putting the genie back in the bottle when you lose people's trust. You can't, it's not like you gave somebody the wrong change and you correct it. At this point in time, this isn't the first time this has happened, not always just in this county. But, you know, a lot of people like to use hyperbole, like, oh, the democracy's under threat. This is our democracy, and when people lose faith in how they cast votes, you don't have a democracy anymore. And I'm trying to understand why we need to continue a contract with a company that failed their only objective. Their only objective. Not a secondary objective, not one of the things you do. The only thing you do got screwed up again. So why don't we find out who's responsible so that we can make sure those people don't have jobs anymore? Because public office, public elections, there needs to be real consequences, not just, oh, I'm sorry, it won't happen again.
Anybody?
I'd like to know who.
Understood.
Okay. Who else from council? Ms. Zirinsky.
I have to say that this election was disappointing on a lot of different levels.
Your mic's on,
And
right?
it definitely is on.
Thank you.
But, you know, it's really difficult when you are the winner to have a shadow cast upon your win. And I know that we all work really hard in these elections. It's not just us up here on the dais, it's everybody out who knocks a door, who makes a phone call, who does anything to make sure that these elections are winnable. And, you know, I heard so many things from the people at the polls that day, that it wasn't just the machines that didn't work. It was also people at the polls having, giving information to voters that wasn't necessarily correct. So the procedures have to be evaluated, not just in what you do, but also everywhere down the line and how we communicate to the poll workers, what kind of information they're getting clearly articulated with definite directions of how to direct voters to vote. And I get it, I understand human errors. But from what I understand, the errors on the 3 questions were a simple logic issue that you didn't test every single permutation of the possible answers for those 3 questions. It's my understanding you did yes, 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 no, 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 and that you didn't potentially think, like it doesn't even, you've been doing these elections for how many years? Decades. These machines have been out there. I can't understand why a simple logic test wouldn't be something that you have perfected by now. And so that's really disheartening, and I share my colleagues' just utter frustration at the process. You know, I was here when we voted on these machines. I cast a paper ballot every single time because I want my vote to count. I hand deliver that ballot. And I could say that the process has errors at so many different levels, and we really need to instill trust. So somebody has to be held accountable for this. And I understand why Mr. Gofredo is asking for names, and I understand why he won't give them either. But ultimately, somebody needs to be held accountable at your company and probably in the county.
Mr. Hickman?
Yes, and I'm not going to, this is, to me, I'm looking at this as a two-lane street. One is you as the vendor, one is us as the county who hires the vendor. And that's why I have questions for Mr. McClure. And I'm not going to saddle you with that end of it, but I do want to talk to you about you as the vendor. And I don't need to know, as long as you know who's screwing up this. I mean, and with all due respect to Mr. I understand the frustration. We've all heard it. I heard a lot of it. Now, I do believe you, and I do believe some of the major elections turned out the way they would have turned out. The problem we run into is voter confidence, which is at an all-time low. It now matches politicians who are at an all-time low. And not all of it is fair, but it's real. It's out there. And we have to do our best to allay that with folks. And I don't know what we can do. From your case, you said you know how this happened, and you are going to address it from your end, because there's a county end here too. I'm not putting it all on your shoulders. I think the county bears responsibility in this as well as you. And I don't want to minimize it. I know there's been a lot of minimizing. It's not the voters' job to think about simple math problems. It's not the voters' job to be concerned with, well, don't worry if this says this, that says that, and so on and so forth. That's not the voters' problem. That's our problem. And I share that. I'm partially responsible too. When your system was pitched to us, and it was really the only real system pitched to us, I don't necessarily disagree that you have a great system, but twice in 4 years we've had problems. And as an old baseball fan, I would say, just from my own perspective, 3 strikes and you're out. And I know that would be cost, and we'd probably be in lawsuits with the administration, but I don't think we could have a third problem and sustain your vendor status. So I just want to say that I believe you, that you want to address this. I believe that you want to fix it from your end. And I would hope that you get all the cooperation you need from the county. I'm still not convinced this was totally your fault. We have a voter office and voter professionals. It's our job to ensure that the machines we put out there have been tested and work well. Can anything happen? Yeah, mistakes happen. And I know that with the new voting type, the new machines, especially electronic, there's all kinds of questions people have all the time. They want to go back to paper and this and that. I mean, I've been preaching to people for years now, which sort of makes me sitting on the tail of the donkey, that the machines now in elections in the 2020s are more accurate than they ever were, because ballots, I mean, guys would meet guys in bars and buy them a drink and then they'd go vote. So, I mean, the thing is, I believe that we've put a lot of protections and a lot of laws in place, but it doesn't matter what I do or what I say. It matters what the guy walking out of the poll or the lady walking out of the poll says, and then when she hears it, and I don't want any excuses. I mean, it's simple. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's simple. It doesn't matter if it's complicated. What matters is it happened. So just from me to you, as a council person talking to you, and I'm not trying to be, I don't want to be disrespectful at all. You have a tough job, and you are probably, from a county standpoint, we are responsible for voting. It's when I talk about human services, Mr. Cusick always reminds me that one of the other key functions of the county is core, I'm sorry, excuse me, not key, core is voting. And in this day and age, and going into next year, where no matter who wins in the presidential, the other side's going to say it was fake, it was cheating, and there'll be plenty of people who'll do it on either side. We have to really be sure that, you know, we're on top of things. As like I'd say to my dad when I was tuning up my car, and I told him his car, I used to like to work on my own car. I said, your car seems out of timing. He says, keep your car working fine. Don't worry about mine. So, I mean, that's just it. We need you to assure us and do everything in your power to ensure that something like this could never happen again. And I don't know what the future is with you in the county. I mean, from my perspective, I'm hearing what you're saying. I understand. You feel it can be fixed. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again, maybe the beginning of the year or something like that. I think we have to have some dry runs, taking any possible situation. But I just want you to know, honestly, from me to you, personally, I can't see a third mistake, no matter how minor, no matter if it's math, no matter if it's somebody's finger isn't hard enough. It can't happen again. That's just my personal feeling as a councilman. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Cusick.
So I have accepted the result of the election in which I was involved, but that's not the issue. The issue is whether or not people can trust the county when they go to vote. I no longer trust your company to use this machine and conduct an election. So going forward, I will either be doing ballot on demand or I will be voting by mail. I will not vote on your machine next year, and I encourage anybody who has any doubts to either vote by mail or do ballot on demand. Because Mr. Heckman is using 3 strikes while I'm using shame on you once, shame on me twice, whatever that is. This is how it applies. I don't trust you anymore. So I will not be voting on your machine, and I will be voting ballot on demand, or I will be voting by mail, and I will encourage everybody else to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Goffredo.
You described the problem, but I never really heard you say, is it true that people were voting, I believe in the judge retention race, and the vote that you casted on the screen flopped on the ballot depending on how you casted it and what sequence? Is that correct?
That's not correct, no.
Can you explain to me exactly what happened?
Yeah, so if, I can't remember the judges, I think one of them, name was Victor, I believe. So if you said yes for Victor, you were going to get a yes printed on that card. The only thing that was incorrect was the label above that yes. The label above it was incorrect. So your yes is in the right spot where it should be. You can confirm that your yes is there, but the label above it was what was incorrect. So it wasn't
What did the label
flipping.
that was above it say? What was incorrect about it?
It had flipped with the other retention race.
So where you thought you were saying yes to, you were saying yes to the other person?
Depending on how you interpret it, the yes was in the right place in the right contest. It was just the label verbiage above that was incorrect.
do the machines have the capability of vote swapping depending on how the code's written?
They are not capable of vote
Are
swapping.
you sure about that? Because what about the tabulation machines? The question is, what kind of proprietary information do these machines possess that if somebody wanted to, could write code to do whatever they want? They're computers, right? They could be programmed any which way. And the fact that there's an error being made is because there's a coding malfunction, correct?
Well, it was actually a data entry error. Yeah, it was not a coding
Data
malfunction.
entry error in the
Yes.
coding of the machine?
A human entered data into the incorrect field.
Right, so that's basically what I'm saying. So these can be manipulated. What we're doing is we're casting votes, and we want to see it on paper because we feel good about paper.
Yeah.
Why do we have the machine at all? Why don't we just write our votes on paper? Why are we paying millions of dollars for machines to do what we all inherently think is secure, seeing it on a piece of paper? Because I see so many errors and so many areas where errors can occur. Because why? What are we gaining out of it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that.
Yeah, go ahead. Why,
Yeah, so
can I ask you another question?
Sure.
If I just took a ballot and went into a booth and filled it out with the marker, why can't I do that? What is your machine giving me that I can't do with a paper ballot?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll first start by saying I'm a huge fan of hand-marked paper ballots. We support hand-marked paper ballot systems throughout the country. That's a great way to vote. Ballot marking devices have become very prevalent throughout voting all over the country and all over the world for a number of reasons. One is because of the protections that it provides a voter. A lot of the errors that are made, particularly on a hand-marked paper ballot, involve overvoting or undervoting or marking, whether it's an oval or a different type of ballot, incorrectly. And what happens when that occurs is that vote is lost and there's no recovery. It's gone. It's an error, and that voter leaves thinking they cast a ballot for someone, but they didn't. There's no way to correct it. What these ballot marking devices do is they give the voter opportunity for feedback. First of all, they prevent overvotes. You can't vote more times in a contest than you're allowed to. It won't let you do that. If you undervote or miss a contest, it's going to alert you to that and say, hey, you might have missed this. Maybe you want to vote on it. So the voter protections are one of the main reasons. Another big reason that the ballot marking devices have become so prevalent is because of the accessibility features. So a lot of voters, marking a hand-marked paper ballot seems simple to a lot of people, but can be very challenging to a lot of folks with disabilities and other types of impediments. So the accessibility features of the ballot marking device open up voting to a larger audience of the public who can now vote independently and without assistance. And that's a big reason why folks have latched on to the ballot marking devices.
I appreciate your answer, and I think you personally, I think you're here doing your job and your heart's in the right place. But at the end of the day, we can't afford to have, and I'm never going to make the claim that I think this was either on purpose or that this affected every race. I can't tell you that for sure, but I don't believe that. I don't think that this was on purpose. I think we use complicated machines that nobody on that side of the room understands personally. They can't computer program. They can't go in there and make sure everything. They are trusting people that work for your company to come out, run through a litany of tests, and we're all hoping that everything's on the up and up. So theoretically, we're not qualified to make sure we can oversee the machines that we're paying money to run our elections. We have to trust you, a private company owned by people who all have, everybody's got political agendas and everybody's got political affiliations. We just trust that everybody's doing the right thing. Well, I'm starting to lose trust that people have enough integrity and honor to do the right thing across the board. I'm not saying that for this administration, but we're looking at elections nationally. I'm sorry, this isn't the second time. This is the third time. In 2020, I was getting phone calls about people showing up to places to vote, and they were being told that they had already voted by mail-in ballot. So it's like, okay, that might have not been the SNS's problem, but ever since we opened the door for all these new, more convenient ways, so everything's so easy, it's gotten only more difficult, and less trust is now in our elections. I've never seen this level of distrust in American elections, and it's crazy to me. And it's crazy that we still have people arguing for the things that we're doing when all we're trying to do is count votes. So to say that I'm dismayed or disheartened or disillusioned, all those things and then some, this is ridiculous. And if nobody resigns, I'll resign because I'm not going to be a part of this stuff. I've tried to come in here to get my hands on how this stuff works, and now I'm a part of it. Now I'm responsible for it, apparently. And I disagree with all of it. I think this is a laughingstock, that this is how we do elections. 2023, we can't get accurate election results. It's embarrassing. So I'm hoping somebody steps up and takes some accountability for this, because so far I've seen nothing.
Mr. Brown?
Good evening, Adam. I think in taking a look at what I've heard and the information that's been shared, I think the disappointment in terms of what you said is the issue, data entry, human error. That's understandable, but not acceptable, right? You are a technology company. As Ms. Zirinsky was saying, the number of permutations you'd have to go through to figure out the variabilities that you'd want to control for are not that many, and they're not that complicated. So to simply go, well, it was just a data entry error, what if it happened to be in a more critical portion of the voter ballot? Then what would you say? You can't, right? So my disappointment is the fact that what you're saying happened, and how you can now go and check and you'll put safeguards in, it was all controllable. And it should have been controlled long before you ever got the machines out in the field. So that's number one. Number two, I think from the county's perspective, the county had even more responsibility because they're supposed to be managing you. They're supposed to be asking you those kind of questions. What have you done? Where are you going to go? This is not the first election this county has held. It's not the first machine, that the county has used. But your machines failed this twice, or your people have failed this twice. Private sector, somebody'd be fired in a heartbeat. Public sector, I don't know what will happen overall. But the fact that this administration failed to do the balance and checks that needed to be done 3 times over to verify and be sure that what you were putting on that machine that was going out into the field was 100% accurate and foolproof. It doesn't mean that a machine won't fail. That happens. But this was across all machines. The lack of preparation from the county's perspective in being able to prepare to respond to a situation like this in the field, completely unacceptable. The confusion that was talked about from various members, from what was said in the audience about the voters' confusion, the different directions that they were being given, the lack of ballots that might have been available. All of those things should have been thought through and prepared for ahead of time. And when the administration stands before us and says, we're 100% ready to go, we're taking it at face value, we're not doing this work, but that should have been done. Again, those are all controllable aspects to this election. And the biggest loss, which I'll just reiterate what we've heard before, is really an intrinsic one, right? We'll call it trust, we'll call it what you want, but the fact that as a voter, I don't know if my vote counted. I don't know, did it get in or not? Was it close or not? And if we happen to have elections that were decided by 50 votes, I'll tell you what, this room would be far more packed and be far more chaos going on. And as it was said, for the election next year, we have a presidential election that was decided by a handful of votes in the last time around. What would we do then? So one, I agree, with Ron. I mean, this is twice in 4 years. Do something different. Just not acceptable at all. Technically, you should be fired, and whether it be a new system or someone else be brought in order to try to begin to build the confidence back into the place. Same from the county's perspective. This should have been done better. We should have been prepared. Somebody should be held accountable for it. I don't know where in the administration that would technically fall overall, but just not acceptable on any level. And like my colleagues, I use a mail-in ballot. I don't trust the machines. I won't waste my time going in just to be told a mix of information when something isn't quite working right. Things don't always work exactly, and you have to depend on the people in the polling booths, in the polling areas, to give you that kind of guidance. That wasn't there. So quite honestly, what else would we do? And if we can't have the confidence and the trust, in the machine, and we paid a lot of money for these machines. Going forward, I don't see us being able to keep those machines if there was an option to get out. And, I'm sure you're, as Mr. Gofredo said, I'm sure you're here with all integrity trying to correct and tell us what went wrong. But it's like way too late for that. It was way too late the first time it happened with your machines, with the screens and those kind of issues. So this is just like deja vu. So I don't know where to go from here other than things have to change. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Varyu-Hefner?
Thank you for being here tonight. And I would like to ask you if you would give your contact information to our council clerks, because I think we may be asking you to come back for a second
Absolutely.
go around. My understanding is the investigation on this process is not yet complete by the State Department. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with what the State Department is
Right,
doing.
well, my understanding is that they're still looking at this, so we may want to have you back when that's completed. I did vote in person. I always do. And ever since the machine error years ago, I've always decided to go in person because I want the experience of what the voter gets. And so I'm not sure if what you're saying is exactly what happened to me, but I know that people were standing at their machines in my precinct going, I voted this, but it says this. So it was jumping. Maybe it was printing somewhere in the back, but it wasn't printing the way we wanted. If somebody voted yes, it said no. And if somebody voted no, it said yes. And so they said, well, if you vote all yes or all no, so right there, people are being compelled. You either do it this way, vote on paper, or you can come back later. So a lot of people couldn't come back later. I couldn't come back later. There's your part, and then there's our part. I have a question for you. Who tells you what to program? What is the process before we even get to Election Day of who gives you the information that's going to be on our ballot? Because I understand with a state election or even next year's federal election, it's a much narrower field. But this is municipal. There's a lot of moving parts. So how do you get that data, and who gives it to you?
Yeah, we receive that data from the county through a secure portal, and then our staff at ES&S headquarters then enters that data into our election management system to begin designing the ballots.
And then do you have a contact person here in case there are questions that you call on our end? Who do you speak to here to discuss what goes on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure who the contact is specifically in the county for that process. But yes, we do have a contact that we work directly with.
And then who designs the testing based on the information that you get? Like, is it just standard, or who decides how many tests to run? Is that your end? Is that our end? Is it mutual?
Yeah, so we have a number of best practices for proofing and testing prior to an election. We have developed a procedure here working with the staff in Northampton County for our pre-election tests. I mentioned earlier that ES&S and Northampton County staff conduct that pre-election testing together. It's important to note that Northampton County staff hires us and depends on us to be the leader in that testing, to be the expert in that testing. In this situation, we identified a gap in that testing, something that wasn't considered before and needs to be considered very clearly. And we'll close that gap with modifying those procedures going forward.
I mean, again, I appreciate you being here. I think I concur with a lot of what my fellow council members have said. I don't need to beat you over the head with it. I'm disappointed, I'm concerned. But I also, I guess, I hope that you will take exactly what is your company's responsibility and not more. You're responsible for the machines, you're responsible for the coding, you're responsible for the testing that you can do, you're responsible for all the technology. But I'm concerned about what our responsibility on our side is too, because I think that is yet to be discussed, and we will take care of that, because this isn't 100% you. It's not. But I agree with my colleagues, we have to do better. And so again, if it's something that's not being done on our side by this staff, you need to tell us.
Absolutely.
You need to tell us, because people don't seem to want to tell us things. We had a governance committee meeting. We asked, is everything okay? What have you done? And we did not get a report on what was done, by whom, when. We're good, is what we heard. So if we need to start inviting you to those things, give us your contact. We will, so that you can come and give us those reports. Because my trust is not just with those machines. It's the entire process all the way around. And I think for the folks who had to work there and were, they didn't have enough papers, they didn't know what to say to people, like, that goes beyond coding. So I thank you for taking your responsibility for things, but I wouldn't fall on the sword for anybody. And I hope you'll come back again.
Anytime I'm invited.
I have a question for the gentleman. Yeah. I've been in IT a long time, 50 plus. I ran a lot of applications, a lot of software. Seen bugs, all kinds of stuff. But the main question I always ask is, this is programmed. What's going to break? Is something going to break? Did anybody ask that question? You got the software. Is it going to break something? What is breaking? Nobody knew. You didn't know towards the end. You should be doing that during test. I understand you have a test step. That's what you do. You test all this stuff. But did anybody ask the question? What happens if everything's right? What's going to break if something breaks? What could possibly break? I don't think anybody asked that question. I don't think county asked it. They're all saying, hey, you're telling me it's good to go. We're fine. I just don't find it.
Yeah, respectfully, I disagree. That's exactly what we do when we go into the testing process. We try to think through every possible scenario that could go wrong and try to design a procedure that would catch them. To be quite honest with you, for any given election, I could test for 10 years. Every single possible scenario you could think of, and now I could do that scenario when I unplug the power cord. Unfortunately, this was a gap that we missed, and regrettably so, very regrettably so. And in any testing regiment, I've been in charge of software development operations myself, you'll go through a testing process, you'll lay out a very detailed testing plan, and you still may miss something. And in this case, that's what happened.
Now you're looking for what's going to break. If you're looking for what's going to break, you're looking for it. I don't care what kind of stuff you test. My question is, this is all right. Everything's good. Everything looks good. What's going to break? You don't know. Come election day, you're broke. Nobody knew until, well, okay, 9 o'clock. Hey, we got a problem. That's just uncalled for. Unacceptable.
Mr. Galfredo?
Adam, you just said something there that really, really troubled me. You said there was thousands of things that you guys, Mr. Giovanni said you got to test for things. He said we did, but there's thousands of things. You're basically saying that it's too complicated, too complex to be sure that we're not going to have problems. Am I wrong?
No, that's not what I said, no.
Go ahead, try to reiterate what you just said to Mr. Giovanni when you said you got to run, troubleshoot, you got to see what's going to break.
Right.
You said we did,
Yeah.
right? And then what did you say after that?
Yeah, I said I could test for years and years. I could test every possible permutation and combination that could ever possibly happen. I could do it with one leg off the ground. I could test it with one hand off top of my head. But ultimately, you have a time frame within which you have to work, and you have to determine what you can test within that time frame that's going to have the best impact. In this case, we absolutely thought we did that, and ultimately, we had a gap in that testing.
So essentially, there's not enough time to test all the things that could go wrong in a given election cycle.
There is enough time, yeah, absolutely, but you may miss something, and then you'll have to incorporate that into your next time.
And I asked before, and then Ms. Hefner said that she witnessed it as well. And I had poll workers call me on election night stating that exactly how she described. They voted for one person yes, voted for the other person no, came out opposite on the ballot, vote flipping. How can it be that these machines have the capability to do the very thing that they're not supposed to do, vote flip? So let me just continue to explain. If there was somebody who wanted to do something evil and rig an election, they could with your machines. And then my next question is, what can the tabulators do? Can the tabulators have weighted ratios on certain candidates, run a bunch of ballots through, and all of a sudden one voter gets more? Who knows? We don't know. We're trusting. and we're finding out that our worst nightmares are coming true with the voting machines, what can the tabulators do? What can you do during the adjudication process? Can people go through the adjudication process, take an image cast, and switch votes? And then say that's the vote? Can they?
Yeah, there's an adjudication process. I'm not familiar with the exact process here in Northampton County, but
Should be. If you're here to speak in front of us publicly, after what just happened, you absolutely should be. And shame on you for not knowing who at your company did what they did, and shame on you for not knowing these things. I have one last question. How many ES&S machines are in Northampton County right now?
I don't know the exact
You
number.
should know that, because I want to know how much they're all worth. Because what I see this as is a breach of contract. The second you don't perform the very thing that we're paying you to do, you breached your contract. So I'm beyond disappointed, I'm angry. And I don't think there's anything you could come and up here and say to relieve my anger.
Wow. Mr. Heckman,
Yeah, and I'm just going to, I'm not going to say much more. I'll just say that we do lots of vendors. County has vendors here, vendors there. And I think the frustration or the problem is you've heard all the reasons you heard me speak. We get vendors who say, I can do the job for $700,000, and then we get 3 change orders and the job gets done for 1.5 million. And that's common. It's happened for decades. It'll continue to happen. Or, the roof's fixed. We had it happen. Roof leaks in 2 years. Or we put windows in Graysdale, and a year later, the windows are leaking, and the contractor drifted into ether. So, and those all, though, as frustrating as they are, they can be fixed. And your business is so critical. And I'm not piling on you, because a lot of this was put on us by the state government, and I'm not going to get started on the state and federal government. But I will say that we were told you've got to do boom, 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 boom. And we did. I mean, but as a vendor, you're in a special class all by yourself. I mean, and I'm sure you're hearing that tonight. It's not like fixing a roof. It's not like saying, hey, council, give me a change order. It's do or die. And it goes to all those intangibles I and everyone has mentioned. So I think you understand the frustration, but I just wanted to say, you're going to be held to a higher standard than most vendors the county deals with, because you're, in many ways, I mean, we have human service vendors whose people's lives are in there, and judicial. But other than that, you are the vendor that people are going to be depending on the most, because right now we have and it's sad, we have some very, very dark clouds hanging over elections nationwide. I mean, and there isn't much you can say. To get a conspiracy theory going, you only have to find 1% of 100% to show how that was wrong. And then you can rate books, movies, and all kinds of things. And nobody cares about the other 98 or 99%. So I don't think anything was done intentionally or any of that. But I do understand people and the slower vote totals. Somebody who lost, I know people who run little districts in that townships, they've won by 2 votes or 5 votes or 6, and they question it. It was probably accurate in their case, but they're not wrong in being upset. So from me to you, as a public official, to you as a vendor, I just want to again stress how important your role is in county government. I mean, it's critical. It's a critical core function, and we have to rely on you. But as Ms. Hargo Hefner said, not just you, because you've done your part. I got hit with so many questions. I even had people from my party come up and say, am I allowed to come and talk, or will I get in trouble? And I said, you talk anytime you want, you're going to get in trouble as far as I'm concerned. So the thing is, you've answered your questions, maybe not to everybody's satisfaction, but I think we have to deal with a lot of things at our end, quite frankly. But thank you. That's all I just wanted.
Mr. Brown.
Adam, you mentioned best practices, and in your conversation with Mr. Giovanni, the 10,000 permutations you could possibly run, and I get all that. But what I'm finding most disturbing is if you have best practices, we miss the most fundamental, data entry. This isn't like I'm asking you, if the lightning strikes and the wind's blowing at 20 miles an hour, we'll be there. I'm not interested in that. But this is data entry. This is a name on a ballot. It doesn't get any more fundamental than that. And if the best practices aren't verifying that, and it's simple yes, no. Oh, I pushed no, it came up where I pushed it. It said yes, that came up where I wanted to go. The data entry, I don't know where the error came in. You said it was in, you received it from the county. I don't know if the information coming from the county was in error when you received it. I don't know. But the best practices, these are fundamentals. Before we get even into anything else, that if we can't even put the data in correctly and have a system to double check. I put a, John Brown on the ballot and it didn't come out Bob Jones. Fundamental. So I think that, with everything else that was said, that's the part I find most disappointing. And I'll go back and push on the county again, because this is the stuff you guys are supposed to be verifying. That the information that was provided to these guys is accurate, is in the way it's supposed to be, and is showing up on the machines the way it's supposed to. And then when you begin to operate the machine, that it translates as it's supposed to. So, on both counts, this is fundamental. This is basic stuff. So, Tom, I get I'm not an IT guy. I won't even get into that. But I do know what happens if you just put the data in wrong. You're going to get crap out no matter what. And in this case, that's exactly what happened with this election. It crapped out. The results are what they are, and to the candidates that won and lost, so be it. But the impact that it's having, and will continue to have, not only this week, next week, this is going to again hang over this county, because this is not the first time. The same thing when, back the last time we had the issues, it was something fundamental that could have been caught. So, best practices for your firm, Charles, best practices for the county, I wouldn't use the word best at this state. And I think those need to be looked at also.
Understood.
Anybody else? Ms. Zirinsky?
I just have a couple questions. How long does it take you to program an individual machine, like to load the program on?
To load an individual machine with the programming, it's less than 5 minutes.
Less than 5 minutes. And what is the process by which you load that program on the machine?
They're loaded via USB stick.
So you could have a program on a USB stick and have a new program within 5 minutes.
No, just loading the machine is 5 minutes. To prepare the programming and do the ballot design and layout.
How long does that take?
It varies. It depends on how many iterations of proofs you go through with the ballots, but it can take anywhere from a few days to a couple weeks.
Okay. Because once you determined that when you press the button to say yes for, I think, Pinella or whatever, right? It said yes or no, and a different name came up, right? So you knew that that was the issue because you were able to tell the individuals at the polling locations that it was flipped.
Yeah, the title verbiage was
The
flipped.
title verbiage was flipped.
Right.
So the vote, yes, no, yes, was correct in the right place. But if you had these three fields, let's just call them for lack of a better word, these fields flipped, but this was correct.
Right.
So how long would it have taken to correct that?
Yeah, the adjustments in the programming could have been probably done, maybe in a couple of hours, but then you would have had to go through all the testing procedures, the pre-election testing procedures again, before that coding could be deployed. And then you'd have to go out to all the polling places and load those.
And
on all
then
the
load it
individual-
on, right, okay. So, but in the same respect, you get this printed out copy, right, when you do your testing. So You're telling me that the fields were wrong. Why didn't somebody catch that the names were opposite?
Yeah, the pattern we used had yes, yes, yes for each of those
Yes, and
retentions.
no, no, no. And is
Right.
that why it just never flipped?
So it just wasn't, obvious enough to the testers that it would flip because it would just say yes, yes, yes instead of seeing that change. So the change we're going to is to use a different pattern that would rotate those yes, nos, and you would then identify, oh, something's wrong here. I selected yes.
So
and it's
you
not lining
tested
up.
every machine with the same thing? The same yes, yes pattern? You didn't deviate that pattern to see if there were any anomalies in the outcome?
It's a similar pattern, but it varies based on what's on each ballot style. So each ballot style may have different contests and candidates, so the pattern does change from ballot to ballot.
Right, but the test for those 3 sections was the same on every machine. From what I understand, there's like 300 some machines. So why didn't you vary between machines so you could see? I mean, I know that you want consistency to see that all the machines work the same, but maybe there has to be several rounds of testing with different QA measures or
Yes,
different
absolutely.
logic tests.
Absolutely, that's exactly what we need to do.
Yeah, because I see that a lot is coming down here. You know what I mean? And I get it, you're in the hot seat for this. And there's a degree of human error here. It was a series of misfortunate events that occurred that day that just kind of rippled out. And that we can't get that back. But we have to move forward somehow. And from what you said about the accessibility of the machines, I remember when they rolled these machines out and they talked about that. We don't want voters to be disenfranchised. We want voters to be able to vote. And now we have so many different choices. But that seems like that definitely should have been caught, yeah. And just understanding that if we would have caught that even a few days before the election, it could have been fixed. It's heartbreaking.
Okay, anybody else? You know, my job here as a president sometimes is to sit here and mediate and make sure everybody gets a chance to speak about this. So I'm just going to hit you with something from purely me. And then I'm going to address with Mr. McClure the same question. Do you know how important a vote is to the people in this country? I sit here as a man whose history tells him in 1964, my parents were allowed to vote for the first time. What happened last week trampled on what so many of my folks lost their life for. Do you know how much that hurts the core value of what we're talking about? It's very hard to sit here. I have other things on my mind, and I'm straining just to be here because my heart's heavy somewhere else. But to sit here and listen to my colleagues, one after another, tell you what happened there. We already have enough dissension and divisiveness in this country, and now we have that same problem in Northampton County. 3 elections, CNNs, Fox, all these people come here because we're the heartbeat of this country. Your machine just rattled the hell out of our competence. And it's very hard to sit here and listen to this. So I'm going to excuse you, and I'm going to bring Mr. McClure up, because I'm guaranteeing you, council members want some answers from him. I appreciate that you came here and you took the punches. I don't know, I could have taken some of the punches that some of these guys thrown at you. Not in the state that I'm in today. But I appreciate your honesty in coming up here. But I just want you to think about what I just said to you. And I hope the people at home hear what I just said. You know, I have it from a different perspective. A vote from folks like me is huge. And when that shook, you know, when I came out and the guy said, well, you explained to me after I voted that there was a flaw? He didn't tell me going in. The only reason I found out because my wife said to me, did you know about this? What are you talking about?
We can't have that happen. This falls on us. We represent the voters. I thank you for your presence. Mr. McClure, I'm sure members of council have words for you. Would you please come back up? And
Thank you.
thank you for coming. As what council member would like to address Mr. McClure first? Mr. Heckman.
Lamont, none of us wanted this to happen, so let me start off by saying that. You didn't want it to happen, I didn't want it to happen, nobody wanted it to happen. So just respectfully from me to you, and then maybe, you'll be able to touch on them, and I'll just sit back. The things that concerned me, as I spoke to people, they came up to me, and just from what I observed, let me reiterate that I think the major races came out, they were right. I don't know if there were 2 votes up, but there were so many votes between that I think that, I also think that, as I said earlier, the counties were put into a position of move now. I think it's not just the machines, there's a lot that feeds into it, the drop boxes, that's always had a discussion, even though that's not part of our discussion today. But it's all fed into probably where we are here today, and the overall thought by a lot of people out in the public. Now, specifically to us, and you would know, you've certainly brought this up, and you'd agree, we are a bellwether county. In the state, we do attract national media now, because Northampton County is a bellwether. And my old deceased dad, who was a rock-ribbed Republican, used to say you could put a Democrat, an old dog up as a Democrat, and they'll win in Northampton County. Well, that's not the case anymore. At least they have to be a younger dog. But the thing is, I would just say this. There's no levity in this, I get it, and I have to mind my manners. As I said before, we had these machines, and I approved them, I voted for them, so I'm in this with you. 2 times in 4 years, that can't happen again, in my opinion. What troubles me, and I'm sure you'll address some of these, is then I'll just sit back. I was stunned that even though you may not expect something, that there weren't enough paper ballots for people to fill out. What really troubled me was, and I've seen the videos, people turned away at the polls, come back later. We can never do that. And having someone being told at a poll, well, why is that? I was told by the county I'm to come back later. I don't know if somebody was just freewheeling it. Phones. When problems were observed or noted, why didn't some of these people call? Not all of them did. And some phones weren't even turned on. And finally, and I know you agree with this, all of this is coming down to voter confidence. It's the most important thing we're dealing with. And I'm sure you're going to get other things from other people. I don't know. I know we have a new registrar of elections. Is he here tonight, or?
No, Chris isn't here this evening.
Why not? Okay, fair enough. That's troubling in and of itself for me. It's his department now. So, you know and I know how important is voter confidence, and you know as I know what little things can, one inconsistency. I was in middle school when JFK was assassinated, and I've read, as a history buff, countless books. And it was convenient to believe there was this big conspiracy or something. But after reading even critics that looked at all the evidence, and now with modern science and everything else, I'm firmly convinced it was one man, little man who wanted to be significant. In the old words of the Greeks, if you want to be famous in eternity, find the wisest man in the land, kill him, and then whenever they mention his name, they'll mention yours. It was a crime of convenience, and it's done. It was done. But in our human nature, we can't accept that chaos can reign in life. So we've all had to come up with It had to, because people didn't like, I'm sure there's people that don't like you. I'm not one of them. But I mean, any president, any leader has people that don't like them. We agree on end results. Sometimes we argue over process. But that's where I'm coming from. And I mean, I'm not interested in about heads rolling, but I am interested in accountability. And people that are responsible, the office down there, has to be held responsible for this. I mean, it should have been their job to make sure the tests are done right. It's their job to make sure paper ballots are out there. It's their job to communicate that you have your phones on. It's their job to if the minute they find out people are being turned away at the polls, say you can't have that, you can't do that. Give them something, anything. Those are the things that concern me as much, if not more, than the machine not working. And so that's where I'm at. And you don't have to answer that right now, but those are my concerns, and you may get more specific on those. But that's what I wanted to point out.
Do you want specific questions answered? There was a lot. I took notes, but I don't think I got
figured
everything.
you'd take notes. You do. Well, no,
So with respect to internal accountability,
yeah.
the folks who work in elections are either career service or they're members of the bargaining unit. So there's a process that I have already set into motion to interview them using the human resources apparatus that we have in the county, and understanding that we have rules with respect to the career service and rules with respect to our organized employees, such that I will get all of I preliminarily received a bunch of answers. One of the things you have to understand is that a lot of what I have is second and third hand. The only time I ever go into the elections office is to vote or to hand my campaign finance reports in. And I stay away from that because I occasionally get involved in campaigns, and I don't want to be accused of putting my thumb on the scale. So a lot of what I have is second and third hand.
But you're personally going to oversee this. I mean, you are the chief executive officer.
Yes, correct. I'm not disclaiming responsibility to do that. But what I'm saying is,
you're going to be the one looking over.
what I'm saying is, with respect to the investigation of the actions of the employees of the elections division, there's a process that we have to undertake with human resources. We're going to do that. That process is going to begin soon. And when I have those answers, I'll be able to take action, if action is warranted based on what we learn.
Fair enough. Paper ballots.
Paper ballots? So here's my understanding of the number of paper ballots that were assigned to each particular precinct, which, with respect to this problem that was caused by ES&S's clerical error, was that the previous director, our registrar, previous to Mr. Kamini, had determined for several reasons. One, that the weight of the paper ballots was too great for many of our judges to be carrying to the polls and away from the polls, because, as you know, many of our judges of election are no longer young. And so her concern, and I think in collaboration with Mr. Derdinger, but he can probably elucidate more on that, they had determined that there would be a discrete and smaller number of ballots, the thinking being that if a machine went down, they would be able to get the replacement machine out there, and the 25 ballots would be adequate to cover that, to bridge that period of time. That clearly was not true. And for me, it was foreseeable that a situation like this could happen and the 25 ballots wouldn't be accurate. One of the things that I've learned in my initial investigation was that was the decision of the previous registrar, but it had been carried through. I said, well, that registrar is not here with us anymore. Why are we still only sending 25 ballots out to the... Yeah. And so then some of the other reasoning came up. The fact that all of this paper was being printed and wasted. And the fact that, so an ecological argument and then a financial argument, the cost of the paper. But here's the thing, you're gonna need a forklift to take the paper that is gonna go to these precincts next year, because there's gonna be a ballot for everybody based on voting history for everybody that would vote in that precinct in every one of those precincts. Because Mr. Mr. Myers rightly points out, some considerations overbalance others, and there needs to be an adequate number of emergency paper ballots in each of these precincts.
The two things can go together that I had, Lamont. Mr. Lamont. I've known him. Turned away at polls, some people, and phones not turned on or used. That clearly has to come from us.
Yeah, so that's just
I know you got in
outrageous.
your best
That's just outrageous that happened. And again, I apologize to every single voter that happened to on Election Day on behalf of the county. It should never happen. It's outrageous. I can tell you this. No one from the county ever instructed any judge of election or any other poll worker to tell people to come back later. I have learned that instruction never went out to anyone. So I'm very confident that was a decision that was made at the individual polling places by the judge of elections. And as you know, Mr. Heckman, many of the judges of elections are independently elected.
Oh, yeah.
They don't work for the elections division. The state doesn't control them. They're individually elected, and they don't have to abide by anything the county tells them. Now, that's not, that isn't to excuse what happened, because what happened was in part caused by the fact there weren't enough emergency paper ballots in a particular precinct.
Well, and we're at the end of the food chain on that. So while they may not have, it still comes down to the county.
Right, correct.
And I mean, I guess the thing is.
Yes.
No, I mean.
I agree.
I hear what you're saying. I do. I think the other thing too, though, is that and you said too, turning people away at the polls. I find that unbelievable. And I mean, I would think somebody would have called it, or there'd be a procedure in place. Let's just say you start and you're.
So my initial understanding from my inquiries that I have done, which has not been formalized, that's why I'm bringing human resources in. I want to get everybody's statements down on the record, right?
Human resources
Yeah,
should run it.
that's right. But my understanding is when judges would call into the office on that day, they were specifically being instructed not to turn people away. So not only was there not an instruction to turn people away from the county, when the judge would call in with the particular problem, they were being specifically instructed not to turn people away.
What about the phones? I mean,
So they're all trained on the phones. They're all given the phones.
turning them
And you
on?
can't make them turn on. You can't make them turn them on. Especially the independently elected ones. Some turn them on and then don't look at them for the rest of the day.
well, you know, and that's
here's
summed up. I
Yeah.
mean, where I'm coming from, and I know you take this serious. We've talked. I know you. This is you know how important this is, and you know us as a county where this is a big deal. Elections, and I think some people felt that the county was making excuses by saying it's a simple math error and this and that. And I think that's a reason, but it should never become an excuse in that ultimately, and I've said to people, I voted for the machine. You have every right to be ticked off at me if you think that your vote didn't count. I believe it did, but I can't guarantee it, but we are going to look into it. And that's what I've said. But I also maintain, Mr. McClure, that this company can't make another mistake.
I agree. You're absolutely right. I think your baseball analogy is absolutely correct.
Well, all right.
I've told Mr. Carbolito as much. But let's get right to that if we can. Right to the issue of what system would we use for next year. I think we will investigate, because it's just prudent to do that, what's out there in terms of a replacement system. But here's my initial reaction with respect to that. With any system you have, there is a learning curve. So you're heading into the 2024 presidential election where more people will vote than have ever voted in the history of our country. And you're going to then need to train judges of elections and poll workers on how the new system, whatever it may be, works. And so you will necessarily have errors made as judges and poll workers learn how to operate the new system. You are guaranteeing by introducing a new system that you will have run-of-the-mill minor errors that do not affect the outcome of any election, but they will occur, right? There's also a learning curve for voters in voting with a new system. And I, for one, think sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. I don't want voters learning on a new system during what some people think will be the most consequential election of their lifetime.
And most controversial, no matter who wins.
Yeah.
I think, but look, I'm fine. I'm going to proceed to whoever else wants to talk. I just wanted to, I figured I'd list my list and get it out of the way. And I just, one last question. Who was the direct contact for the county with the?
So there are multiple contacts, and Chris Camini and Amy Hess and a number of employees in the elections division have regular contact with the ES&S about various issues. Mr. Derdinger has a number of high-level contacts with ES&S, and will even drill down on that relationship when things need to move or occur that aren't moving or occurring. So there's a number of people who have contacts with ES&S.
When's our primary in Pennsylvania?
I don't know, did they move it?
I know, it's been,
23rd.
Right now, it's April
Right now?
23rd.
Yeah, they were talking about moving it up, but I don't think
my
they're going to.
comments about the state and the Fed government.
The other thing is, we may not even be able to get a new system, get it certified, and get
Well,
it in place. So, I mean, I think,
I'm relating to your devil
and I'm
no
not, look,
versus the devil you don't
I
know.
understand the desire that people have to have a new system. I just don't think that they fully appreciate how difficult it would actually be to buy it, implement it, and have folks vote on it in a 2024.
The manual, that get away from the computer, like the Lehigh County. And I'm not here vouching for Lehigh County system. I'm just saying that is the thought many people have.
So in Lehigh County, it's ES&S. They have their
other-
stuff, and the tabulator that they use at the polling places is the same technology that we use to tabulate our votes. I want to make a point about machines, though. None of this was machine error.
No, it's human error.
It was all human error. It was the humans in Omaha, the particular human in Omaha, that I've asked never work on our elections again. I made that request to Mr. Carbolito tonight. The humans who came here from Omaha, who didn't have, I used the word laziness, that wasn't the right word. The right concept is a lack of imagination, and I think you were all getting around it when you were talking to Mr. Carbolito. No one imagined that doing all yeses and all nos would not catch an error if there was a problem with the yes and the no. So,
Wasn't it Rumsfeld that said we don't know what we don't know?
yeah, it's a lack of imagination. They were fighting the last war. They wanted to make sure the LNA testing showed all the votes, right? So all the votes that were cast on the screen showed up in the results. That's all they were thinking about. They were fighting the last war, but nobody.
Well, I was working polls when we still had the green monsters, and you'd pull the
Right,
lever.
so human-
And the time after that counting, and then not necessarily into Chads, but there were controversies too there. But I think it was just because it was mechanical, there was a feeling of, aha, and now the whole computer thing. But I think we all agree that it just has, voters don't care about system errors. Voters aren't going to care about saying it's a complicated math problem or a simple math problem. You know that. Vote. Our job is to assure the voters as best as we can that the system works. Telling them, and I know you know that, and I'm not.
Well, and I'm not telling them anything. I'm just.
Oh, I know.
I'm making the point that you said machines earlier because that was some of the feedback you were getting, and it really wasn't the machines that were the problem this time. It was the people. The people were the problem.
Right, and we've got to get people to understand. We've got to fix the people or fix the machines or whatever we got to fix. We have to fix.
Or put redundancies in to check
Whatever
the
it
people.
takes.
Mr. Rinsky was next.
Yep, thank you. So you said something, I was at the polls, obviously, on that day. The poll that I was at, they never stopped voters from coming in. But you wouldn't have known there was a problem, except for I heard from other polling locations that there was a problem. Somewhere around like 8 a.m. And so I heard at other polling locations that they said to come back later. They told people, this was what was disturbing to me, your vote's gonna come out opposite on the paper, so vote opposite. That's disturbing. And
Can I just answer that right now before you get on to your next point? Because that needs, I have seen the communication from elections
Yes.
to the polling precincts. No one ever told anybody instructed anybody to do that.
No one told anybody that, but there were individual poll workers that took it upon themselves. To me, that's election interference in some way, shape, or form. So how does that get, documented, and then what are the consequences of that? You just said that poll workers are independently elected.
No, judges of
Or
elections.
judges of elections, that's what I have written down. Judges of elections are independently,
We appoint a number of them too where there are vacancies, so there's
when
that.
there's vacancies, but they don't have to abide by what the county says. So who's keeping tabs on the poll workers to say the appropriate things to voters? And what are the consequences for not?
Well, they don't have to abide by what the county says, but they do have to abide by state law.
Okay.
And it is the Department of State, statewide, and the counties in the 67 counties' obligation to tell them, what the state law is. And that happens.
Right, so
Through
once-
training in every election that we have.
So once that was communicated to them, they had every poll worker had an obligation to communicate exactly what was communicated to them. Not vote opposite, your vote's not going to count, go home. They were not allowed to do that. So what happens to those individual poll workers that acted of their own volition to tell people that kind of information?
Well, I think in the first instance, one of the things we want to pay attention to is we have been very fortunate in Northampton County with our judges of elections and our poll workers whose staff are 156 precincts. Many counties in the Commonwealth and across America don't have enough poll workers. So we want to be very careful not to dissuade poll workers in an already difficult environment to get poll workers and judges of elections from being judges of elections. To answer your specific question, we need to know who those people were, where they were at, and what they did in order to even potentially take some kind of action against them. And I don't know what that action would be.
So how could you find that
Not
out?
invite them back. If their judgment turns out to be particularly egregious, not invite them back.
So I think that would be one layer of gaining confidence back, is that there's some sort of consequence to that kind of communication when you step out of line like that. Because we want to have people properly communicating what the state says to voters and what the proper procedure is. And so I think that's important. The other thing.
So I want to be easy on them, though, in that they didn't create the situation. They were put in a bad spot, and they were just trying to use their brain to figure out a way to make it all make sense for the people who were trying to vote.
Right.
So I'm really reluctant to lay it on them.
But I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that
There's
it's
a number, there's a lot of blame to go around.
Yeah.
But
No.
those folks I'm not blaming.
I'm not trying to blame them, and I'm not saying that they acted with malintent or maliciously to do that, but I think there has to be additional training for these kind of procedures about what the best practices is for poll workers, and I know that they do have training. The other thing that I want to ask is, what kind of compensation is ES&S going to provide in terms of additional training or funding for additional training, voter education? One of the things that happened last time when we talked about voter ballots, mail-by ballots with the date or the signature not there, there were certain procedures in the colored envelope that was added. What are we going to do this time to make this better so that we can further communicate to voters before they get to the poll? I was sent something in the mail that said, did you get your ballot yet? Are you going to mail? These are the procedures. I got multiple mailings on that for vote by mail. Got it. What are we going to do for voters who are voting at the polls?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay, how can we educate voters at the polls to understand how to use the machines better so that we don't have these complications? What they can expect at the polls? I know you did a video once and you showed people how to use it, but that doesn't get to everybody. So
these-
is there something we could mail them to say, this is what you should expect at the polls? This is what you need to do when you're pressing the button? What can we do to help them?
Yeah, and we have in the past done exactly that and can do that again in the future.
Okay.
Mr. Goffredo.
First of all, what are we doing talking about the voters and the poll workers here? Obviously, things went haywire. People were trying to react. Like Mr. McClure said, I will absolutely. Last person we want people blame on is the poll workers that are volunteering there.
That's not what I was doing.
Stop.
And people, when it happened, when the machines were starting to act up, people are talking in line saying, hey, switch my vote. People hear it, people talk, vote the other way. So it goes on, like, they're reacting in the moment situation, all caused by a human error on a computer. Now, I want to ask, what is a machine error? Give me an example of what a machine error would be. Terminator, like AI, Skynet, because we obviously understand humans coded these computers, but they could be coded to flip votes.
The screen not being properly calibrated.
I don't care.
Would be an example.
One of a million, right? There's one of a million things that could be done wrong by humans, whether it's on purpose or on accident, it doesn't matter. It's an overly complicated system for an overly simple task, to record a vote and then to count a vote. So I just want to understand what a machine error would be if you have any example of one.
I just gave you one.
What would that be?
The screen wasn't calibrated properly.
It wasn't calibrated.
No. Correctly. Well, I'm not saying it, these were calibrated in this election properly. A machine error would be if the screen wasn't properly calibrated.
But don't humans go do the testing of the calibrations of the screens?
Correct.
So if it wasn't calibrated correctly, couldn't you say a human made a mistake during the calibration process?
Yes.
Okay, so what would be a machine error with no human input, where just the machine acted up and not a human on the other end?
I can't think of any.
Exactly. So my point is, the machines malfunctioned because of a litany of reasons why they could, whether it be a coding error. I digress. First question that I have, who was at the testing with the SNS from the county?
I'll get you that list of people.
You don't know?
Provide it to you. I know the registrar was there. We recruit a number of people across the length and breadth of the county to assist, because there's a lot of
I only
machines.
want to know who was in charge from the county there that day.
Our registrar, Chris Camini, he was in charge.
And how long has he been with the county?
I don't know, 2 or 3 years now? 2 years.
How long has he been in the position that he's in now?
That length of time.
Okay. How many people do you believe didn't vote because of what went on at the polls?
I have no idea.
Any idea?
Here's what I do know. So I care about that question. And I
all
do,
should, yeah.
I do believe that we had a legal, fair, and accurate election. And one of the reasons.
Well, let me stop
no,
right
wait,
there.
no,
Let me just
yeah,
stop you
I'm
right there.
answering.
You made
I
a
get
comment, I just want to ask you about it.
Sure.
With what information do you believe we have?
I was getting there.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to do was take a look at what happened in 2020, and I had to wait until all the votes were in, and they're all in now, by the way. Election's over. I wanted to look at what 2023 and 2021 looked like side by side, and they're really similar. They're very
similar?
They're very similar.
I happen to be jotting down numbers from 2021 and 2023 on my phone here. Election turnout in 2021, 32.5%, 2023, 33.18%, pretty close. Total amount of votes, 71,000 to 72,000, pretty close. Do you know what the mail-in voting ratio on 2021 to 2023 was? The increase or decrease?
I don't, but I know more Republicans.
13%.
I know more Republicans voted by mail in 2023 than did in 2021. What I do know, and I'm answering your question. I did the math.
Percentage-wise?
I don't know.
My point is, there's
It's
a 13%
actually-
increase in mail-in votes.
Yes, and most of that increase comes from Republican voters, but I understand your
Election
point.
day, do we have an increase?
No,
Do we have a decrease?
a slight one, yes.
3%?
But there are two reasons for that. One, If you look at our voter registration numbers,
Yep.
our voter registration numbers are down
Slightly.
from 20, they're down from 20.
16%.
But they're down from 2021.
Not
And
16%.
more Republicans voted by mail. So,
Okay.
so
We know
so
definitively how many people didn't vote.
I do not, but I
Okay, well, I'm
believe.
looking at
But
discrepancies.
I believe, based on what I have seen, that everybody who wanted to vote that day voted.
Really?
Yes.
Because I've spoken to people that didn't, because they had to go back to work.
Yeah.
So I guess agree to disagree, and you could believe in whatever you want, but unless you have data to back it up, I think it's just a belief.
So,
I'm looking
I mean,
at a
those
13%
numbers,
of mail-in votes
those numbers.
and 3% decrease of election day votes. And you might say more Republicans voted by mail this year, but the majority of Republicans vote on election day.
So, but the fact of the matter is more Republicans voted by mail this year, and our voter registration numbers went down
I
from
understand
2021.
what you just said, but all the numbers I just said were true as well. So we have a conflicting narrative. The question is,
I think narrative's right. I think the numbers look very similar. And so what I did then was.
hold on, stop. I didn't ask
so
a
what-
question.
so what
Just
I-
for a
so let me-
second,
let
can
me
you
finish
listen?
it.
Because
Let me-
I'm talking and you're listening right now.
Let me
With what degree of certainty do you believe that any race outcome could have been changed if people didn't leave from the polls? Do you have a 100% degree of certainty that all the races went the way that they would have went if everybody voted?
Yes.
Or is there 100%?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad we know that for sure. Do you believe this election should be certified?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't think there's a choice. I believe state law requires it to be certified. The certification, my understanding of state law is the certification is ministerial. And
There's also a state law that says paper cards
mandate.
must be accurate for the paper trail of an election, which we already know is not the case.
Well, they will be.
After we make sure yeah, I get it.
No, they are. Actually, I misspoke. They are accurate.
Okay, as executive, do you want to continue using the voting machines at all, or ES&S voting machines? Do you want to go to a paper ballot? What would you like to see going forward?
So I think that, as I explained when I was answering this question with Mr. Heckman, you are guaranteeing that there will be, even if they're just benign, errors by changing the system for the 2024 presidential election.
So your recommendation is to keep things the way they are?
No, that's not my record.
With the machines that we're using, you want to use the same-
It's not my
you wanna use
recommendation
the
at
same
all.
machines we're using in 2023 for 2024?
Absolutely, yes. Because there's no choice.
What do you mean there's no choice? There's tons of choices.
There's no choice.
There absolutely is a choice.
There's no choice
For you to
because.
state that,
I'm telling you why there's no choice.
Okay,
Because
tell me
you
why.
are guaranteeing the introduction of a new system into the 2024 presidential election will be problematic because there is a learning curve, learning to vote on a new system. It's
Mr.
absolutely a
McClure,
fact.
Let me make something very clear. Anything is possible, okay? We could put in a voting system and it could work flawlessly. Could. We could have the same election systems that we had last 2 weeks ago, and it could go terribly wrong. Anything could happen. But if the attitude is we can't do anything because we'll fail, is the attitude from
Well,
this administration?
who said they want to fail?
You
And
just
that's
said
not
if
our
you
attitude.
change it, it'll fail.
Well, it will.
That's a terrible attitude.
It will. No, it
Terrible
necessarily will, as people learn to vote on the new system. It's, you are guaranteeing, even if.
I don't only
even
think
if
we
the
shouldn't
even
use
if
those
the
machines
even if
again.
the
I think we
errors.
should be suing ES&S for completely making a mockery.
Guys, let's.
I'm
Just-
keeping it pertinent to what we're talking about.
Let's kind of harness it in a little bit. It's about the actual process.
Yeah, we're talking about the process.
And what we're doing at this point is jab, hook. You know, we got to find a happy medium here. So, you know, we got to get it to work.
Who do you see at the end of the day, not a career service worker working in the election office, who is responsible from this administration for what happened?
We are pulling it apart right now, and.
It happened 2 weeks ago. We don't know yet. You knew we had a county council meeting today. You don't have somebody to say, even if it's a sacrificial lamb to let people know that we take this job seriously, there's accountability, and we take this position as an honor and not as a given. Because everybody here from the administration's here, except for the guy that runs the elections.
We don't make sacrifices without cause, and as I
cause is election
explained, As I explained to you earlier, I have begun the process of reviewing what we need to do internally in order to help begin restoring confidence in our electoral process in Northampton County, and you will see in the near future what those results are.
Okay,
That's all I have.
okay. Mr. Kusak.
Let's take it in a different direction. Another purchase we made was the e-poll books, and I had a report of 2 of them being switched. Is that true? Did that happen?
I don't know, but I'll find out.
Okay. And then
And by switched, what do you,
where
the wrong
one
precincts?
precinct received one that belonged to another, and the transport back and forth had to be done at 7:05 in the morning when they couldn't register people. to
Okay,
vote.
I
It
will
was
check
one
on, I will,
report that I
where
had.
was that, do you know?
Williams Township West.
Okay,
Out where the church.
we'll get that answer for you.
Then the other question, and this maybe goes somewhat to Mr. Myers had indicated, see, the intent of your ballot is that it is secret. You don't know who somebody else voted for. One of the complaints I heard was that when provisional ballots were in fact handed out, we don't have like dividers or any place to go. So is that something that was taken into consideration when provisional ballots were handed out? And is that something that was even considered?
Well, I think all of the emergency situation wasn't adequately considered, and I think that's demonstrated by the fact there were only 25 emergency ballots at each precinct. So I'll take that suggestion back to them and make sure there's at least one, place where a person can vote in privacy.
Well, I had someone complain that they were they did it, but everybody could see
I'm sorry that happened.
their vote. And then lastly, again, I would again argue that we do have a system that apparently worked flawlessly, and that was ballot on demand and mail-in. And that's, like Ms. Zirinsky, that is how I will vote next year if you intend to use these machines. Thank you.
Mr. Brown. Then you.
I understand the comment about if switching systems and potentially introducing, there'll be errors if we went to a whole new system. From voter having to learn the system, there would be some issues. But I think the counter to that is when we brought this system on, the last time, we had issues. We had major issues with the election at that point where votes weren't going into the right boxes, so on and so forth. Here we are a few years later. That was a crisis. This administration had to respond to that crisis, and we're repeating it. Different set of issues, but we're repeating the crisis all over again. So quite honestly, to Mr. Gafredo's point, bringing a whole new system in, I'm not sure we'd have less errors going into the presidential cycle than we have had in the last 4 years with the current system overall. There was an opportunity to, over the last couple of cycles, to get it right, and it's still not getting it right with this particular system. So I think, I think that's a flaw. I'm disappointed, quite honestly, that you stand there and you're throwing ESS and S under the bus. Human error, got that. They are absolutely here to blame. Then you're blaming the former registrar for not having enough ballots and those types of things. You have to interview career service people. But quite honestly, Mr. McClure, as the executive, I know and you know, we're responsible, in that role, right? But your head of administration, Mr. Derdinger, is ultimately responsible for the election office. They report into him. He's responsible for the current registrar. The fact that that registrar is not here tonight is shameful. He should be here answering these kind of questions as you are and everyone else in this room is answering. And Mr. Derdinger is ultimately responsible for the fact that now not one election cycle, but 2 election cycles have been screwed up by a selection this administration decided when you went with ES&S. So whether we change the system this cycle or not, it needs to be changed out, and there needs to be more accountability in how your administration is handling this crisis, because it is now a crisis. Once you go, oh my God, it happened, hope it won't happen again, it's now twice that it's happening, and I'm not hearing a lot of accountability. I'm hearing, we're checking it out, we'll interview some people, we'll get back to you maybe a few weeks down the road, maybe in a few months down the road, but I'm sorry, Mr. McClure, but not acceptable on any level.
So I think your experience as executive is informing sort of the way I am doing the investigation, because as you know, there's potential liability for the county if we move contrary to the career service, for example, move somebody out, we could end up paying them tens of thousands of dollars for the processes that we use. So I'm being very deliberate in that way, and I'm using that particular case as instruction going forward. With respect to my point about changing out the system, and we won't have more, each election we've had with this system has been audited. There's an audit again, a state mandated audit on November 24th. I encourage you to attend. We've passed all the audits that we've had since the inception of using these machines. So we know, based upon the audits that we have, that at the end of the day, we can demonstrate that the voter's intention was recorded. So I know what some of the flaws here with this particular system is and are. And in this particular instance, it was all human error. It was all human error.
I agree. I understand that. I understand what you're saying overall. But if you ask the voter, they don't care about your audit. They don't care what you perceive the intention of the voter is coming out of an audit. They care the ones that got potentially turned away, those that don't feel that their vote has gone the way it was, and actually the candidates that have a shadow over that. I don't believe that any of your comments will make that go away. The other comment I have is that, well, yes, I understand the process, career service and employees, but I believe Mr. Dertinger serves at the will of the executive and is not under any protected class of individuals and should be held accountable, or the registrar should be held accountable for this election in a more vehement way.
You are correct. He is not.
Ms. Varyu-Hefner?
You answered already one person that was present at the testing. You said just the registrar, or? were
No,
there
we
several?
had multiple staff people there, and we can provide you their names. I would consider that,
Can I
I would
speak
consider,
first?
I would consider that a personnel issue, and
Can
I would
I
like,
speak first?
okay.
I'm
sure.
not necessarily looking to get names to hang anybody out to dry or to indict them. I just want to know how many people are there, who's responsible, what roles they play. I think that would be helpful to
We'll get you
understand.
all that
And I can get the
information.
name, but I don't need to publicly flog them. That's
Get you
not
all that
what I'm
information.
interested in. I'm interested in who wrote the documents to submit to them to do the coding, because my understanding is that was part of the problem many years ago, was how we choose to write things and enter it. So who's responsible for giving them the data on our end to input on their end?
When I have that information, I'll give it to you.
What is the election commission's role in all this? Because my understanding is the state statute is that they're ultimately responsible for this. So how many of them are present at the testing? How many of them are available on the day? What is their role in this process?
So very much like a council meeting, the LNA testing is publicly identified, and for example, the chairs of the political parties are invited to come to the LNA testing. I know the Democratic chair was there, the Republican chair was not. The election commission members could come and participate if they chose to. None have ever chose to. So that's where we're at with that.
So none of them were at the testing? And,
No.
And what was their role on election day? Were they called in? Were they informed?
Not to my knowledge.
How many ES&S reps are available on the day as emergency backups? Because I remember back in the day when we had the malfunction, we had a lot more personnel available to us.
So I think we had 5 or 6. Adam, do you know that number?
We had 4 and then 2 more.
Yeah, so 6.
Where are we in the process with the State Department?
I don't know.
understand you did call them in and you asked for their assistance that day?
Correct. I did not. I was not aware that I was not told.
You did not call them in?
I did not. Mr. Kamini did, and he was being advised by Solicitor Santee. I didn't call them. I didn't know they were being called.
So you haven't spoken to them at all?
I have. Oh, the Department of State?
Yes.
Yes, I have. I've spoken with former State Representative Karen Beyer, who's working in the Department of State now, and has offered to be, because, she's from the Valley, has offered to be a liaison for us directly into the Department of State.
So you can't articulate what the process is that they're following?
No idea.
And I think, is there anybody else that you consider, because I heard what Mr. Brown said, ES&S, the judges of election, the former registrar. To back you up on one thing, the judges of election, in my experience and what I heard at my place, what I heard from other people is they were literally flying by the seat of their pants, trying to problem solve, and I wouldn't hold them accountable or indict them for not following a script, because I think some of them tried to call. I think some of them were just saying, well, you can come back or you could do this. I guess my other question is, so in this or any other process, if there's a problem, who's available here to go out and attend to those problems from our staff? Because
So
if they're isolated out in Lehigh Township, who gets there and how fast?
that's the purpose of the phone.
Well, when they call, how long does it take to get and who comes? When they were calling and all of them were calling saying, I don't have enough paper, I don't have enough
It
paper.
depends on how far it is. And so the paper issue could not have been solved on Election Day.
No one here could have.
That's a planning failure. We could we would never have been able to print enough ballots. It's a planning failure. It's absolutely a failure.
So who's responsible for that?
So.
Today,
what
not
Ms.
5 years ago.
Well, what Mr. Kamini said to me when I asked him that question, he said that that was a practice that he inherited and has just carried through to today.
So he's not taking
So
responsibility for that.
the current, look, I'm going to assign responsibility when I have all of the facts and all the investigation for the people that are responsible to me.
Here, today, now.
Yes, I don't have all the facts tonight that I need to have to assign all the requisite responsibility.
My concern is that we had a governance committee meeting a month ago or so, and we said, are we ready? Because that's our job, is supposedly to be the governing body. That's what it says in the book. And when a governing body has a meeting and says, hey, are we ready? And we hear, yep, we're good, and that's all we hear, that's a problem. And it just seems to be an increasing problem from members of your administration to kind of come and give us terse answers or give us flip answers. And I don't disagree with you on a lot of the points that you made tonight. I don't know that the machines are the problem. I don't know that switching the machines are the problem. But I just think that we deserve to have answers and have a fully transparent process from your end to our end, because then the people can go back and say it was discussed. And it wasn't discussed here. The testing wasn't told to us here. None of that was done. And I just think we could all work better together, and it just seems to be devolving instead of getting better. And this is just the fallout. I'm not asking a question, I'm speaking. I don't need an answer, unless you're going to talk about how it's going to get better. Because calling him out about his failures, or him and his attitude, or me and whatever you think of me, we didn't.
As a body,
Say what?
calling us a disaster as a council.
We're here to work together. We're here to work together. We have to take the responsibility too. I got phone calls. I called your staff just to let them know. I didn't expect a call back. But there's a lineup of people here and a ton of people that aren't here that have, I know there's somebody here who missed the public comment. If you have a letter you want to give to our person so that it's on the record, please do.
So.
But when we ask a question respectfully, we would like it answered respectfully. And we can't blame ES&S all for this. We can't. We just can't.
Well, I agree that they do not bear all of the responsibility. They bear most of it. I would make a point, I think your point about the governance committee is a bit of a red herring. I mean, they were here, Charles was here. I don't know if anybody asked him any specific questions. And since none of us knew that this error was going to occur, whatever particular questions were asked that day or failed to be asked wouldn't have unearthed this particular human error and this level of human errors. Although I don't disagree that this can't happen again.
So
With respect to your comments about communication devolving between, my administration and council, I don't think this is the proper forum, but you know, those issues, some of those issues were just litigated, and there was an answer to them.
I don't think that we have to come up with a script of questions to ask your staff. And then if we do, like, I guess, are we going to have to do that? Is that in your upcoming? Like, we should just be able to ask. The fact that we didn't ask specifically, but we could get a better report, then we're good. Because there's plenty of other scripts and discussions that we get on all kinds of topics. This is, you know, I'm not against you on this one, I'm not. Well, I sat here and I watched the parade of people coming and fighting against these machines. I was part of that, and I was part of the vote for this machine. And I don't just stand against the machine. We just have to do better. And I think there are processes that were in place previously that may have been taken away, but we have a right to know that.
What processes were taken away?
I don't know if there was more training. I don't know if there was more paper. I don't know, but you could tell us. And if you want us to go fishing around for stuff, we will. But I just trust that if we ask you a question, that you're going to answer it as fairly and honestly as you can without worrying about how it's going to look.
Well, I don't think we want you to go fishing around. That's why we're here tonight, answering every question you ask to the best of our ability. That's why ES&S has a Senate Vice President here to accept responsibility for the mistakes they've made, so you don't have to go fishing around. When I'm done doing what I'm doing internally, I will make those people who are still here available to you to ask any question you want to ask of them. But there are processes that have to be followed in order for us to be able to do that.
And I think that we need to be better informed about those processes at times.
Yep,
And continually, because obviously next year, there's going to be a lot more of a light shown on us and to get ready, because I don't think this body wants to work at odds with anybody. I don't.
So I think as a nod toward what you're saying, there's a checklist, an LNA checklist. So we could provide that to you in advance of the election, and you could go through that checklist with the administration who conducted the logic and accuracy testing, ask them to explain to you what that particular item is and what happened and what did they find. We would absolutely do that. We would not seek to stonewall you in that regard.
Mr. Brown?
Just a couple quick follow-ups. Why is the registrar not here?
He isn't here tonight because of the processes that I have set in place based upon mine and your lived experience.
Okay, so he's not here at your direction, basically?
Yes, that's correct.
Because of the internal?
I did not request him to be here.
Thank you. I just want to understand why he wasn't here. With regard to the ES contract, what is the value of the overall contract, and what phase of that contract are we in?
I think the cost of the machines was 2.9, that's already been paid. We have a maintenance and service contract with them that I think is $90,000 a year, but I need to get that for you, and we're toward the end of it.
Okay, meaning another year or two?
One more, I think.
One more year?
Yes.
And how many, I saw different numbers, I don't quite remember. You mentioned there, how many precincts?
156?
And how many machines?
It's well over 300, but
Over 300
but they
machines,
don't all go out, because we keep some in
We always have
reserve.
some in
Yep.
reserve, right,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. I find this extremely stressful and difficult. We're snipping at each other, and this is not something that just happens overnight. Somewhere along the line, administration and council has to be respectful towards each other. That's missing, and it's going to be difficult if we don't straighten it out. Now, one of the things, because a few members of this council are going to be gone within the next 30 days. So it's going to be a new council that's going to come in. Now, I made a note here where it said the machines break, yes, and people don't. To sit here as a organization, a council of folks that we are here, and to just more or less say it's on his company is bogus, because Tom said it quite eloquently. If we don't look at something to see if it can be broken, we have a problem. A few weeks ago, we got into a conversation about leased vehicles. And I made that statement then. I remember being at the college, I remember athletic director telling me, you gotta look at that vehicle and see what can be broke before you buy it. We've got to take that same approach with anything we buy when we're dealing with something as important as this vote. One person, one vote is what this country tells us we're all about. That just got trampled. I'm not blaming the folks at the polls for anything. You have to react to put out a fire. They did the best they could. Whether it was wrong or right, they did the best they could. They should have not been put in that situation to begin with. That's where the problem lies. We have got to do it better. Those of us that are here now, those that are going to be here 3 months from now. Put your ego in the back seat, come in the room and find a solution. If we don't, it's going to all blow up in our face a year from now. You got a primary that you might be able to clean up some mess. I hear you guys saying, yep, the whole thing's got to go. We can't get people to do a damn right. And what the hell makes you think you can fix a problem like this in 6 months? Wake up and smell the coffee. That's not going to happen. We got to fix what we got. If a wheel's broke, you fix the damn spoke. That's what we got to do. Put our heads together, come up with a solution, and be respectful about it. If we're going to go back and forth with each other, tempers rise and drop, you're not getting anything done. Respect. No snarky remarks from that side, no snarky remarks from this side. If we can't respect each other, we're not going to get a damn thing done. I guess sometime with age comes a little wisdom. Maybe I got a little smarter in the last few days. Maybe I didn't. We have got to go forth with this, Mr. McClure and members of council. We got to fix this problem because you know what? Folks on that side and the people out in the street expect us to do the right thing. And I said it earlier. You understand how important a vote is? Everybody, and the only reason I'm saying it again is because I'm a kid who went through history and saw things. And I'm sitting here and we've gone through so many things the last 20 years about voter registration and all this. And we get to the point where we can go vote and we blew it. We got to take whatever knowledge every one of us in this room has and put it in the bowl, mix it up, come out with it right. Don't ignore what Mr. Tate, what Ms. Giovanni has, what Steve Barron comes up and tells us to do, what we use with common sense. And if we don't have any more questions, we got things to take care of. I want to leave that with everybody in their head tonight. Tara, it was nice working with you for the last 4 years. John, you too. Mr. Giovanni.
I just have one comment. I agree with the exec. The machines are not the problem.
Right.
It's the people that program it. I think the machines work fine.
Yep.
We did have some issues in 2019.
Yep.
But I think those machine issues were taken care of. I think it was a programming, and nobody tested for what broke it. That's the problem.
It was a lack of imagination. It really was, in Omaha and here.
I agree with you. I think that's the problem. That's what we got to stop.
So let's, yes, one more, and then we're going to move on,
Well, yeah,
because
I just want to clarify for the record, because I've heard it a couple times now that I'm trying to blame on poll workers, and I definitely was not. My whole thing was making sure that the procedures that are communicated to the poll workers are clear. Not because I want to hold them responsible, but because they have a job to do, and when it's not clear, and you have a lack of clarity, then yes, you do act in what you think is your best interest or the best interest of the elections. And I do not hold them at all responsible, and I value every single poll worker who comes out and takes their day to do this job. And I understand it's not that glorious, you know what I mean? It's a long slog from 6 a.m. to 9 or 10 at night, and all the trainings that they have to do. So I definitely want to clarify that for the record. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. All right, we done with this? Thank you, Mrs. McClure. How about we take a 10-minute break? If we can. 5-minute break?
Is there enough coffee?
Let's do 5 minutes. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Good times.
I don't care anymore. I don't want to use that machine. I'm done with it. I'm not going to use, I don't trust it. Either, whether it's programming, whether it's human error, machine error, it's twice. That's.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you,
Bob
John.
Werner was here. I think he was the lone vote against it. He was right. He was absolutely right.
Tony. Yeah, Tony, I saw.
Yeah.
All right, what do you think about all this? I get frustrated because I kept talking about this. It's not about us as much as the voter.
Yeah.
What is the voter going to do? There's always going to be people who say, yeah, it's all fixed. Sure. You get everybody back in here?
By the way, congratulations.
We're on.
I am not denying you won. Congratulations.
I'm on my way. I'm only going to you.
Do you want the chair?
No, I'm fine. That's the old line. Okay, I was using the necessary. Councilmember seated? And accounted for. Oh, TZ. I have to get coffee, I think. We can start it. We're back in session. 8:40. Come in with her. Close enough.
Thank you, Carrie.
All right, we're going to deal with old business. Old business. Public hearing on an ordinance entitled, an ordinance directing the purchase, implementation, upgrades of the audio and visual capabilities of the county council meeting room. Mr. Giovanni and Ms. Barrio Hefner introduced this ordinance November 2nd, 2023 meeting. Questions or comments from the public? Please come forth, state who you are, your address, and you have 5 minutes. You get my clock going.
Steve Barron, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, about 2 blocks from Mr. Heckman. I spoke to county council about this previously. The ordinance itself has, I already know I will not be purchasing everything on that list because there are conflicting pieces of software on there. The list was something that was put together. I imagine somebody on council had it from our IT department. It was very preliminary and a bunch of ideas, and now it's made its way into county law. We've budgeted for this. The IT team is looking into it. We will consult with county council to make sure that we get all their needs met. The new county council that will be taking over in a couple months, we will consult with them to make sure all their needs are met. But I can tell you right now that we will not be buying everything that is enumerated in that list and ordinance. And it's a waste of money because there's a conflict in the devices you've put in there. So that was my only comment. I repeated what I said before. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask Mr. Barron a question?
Yes, you may.
Do you think that we could make a amendment to the items to state if there's a conflicting item that we buy an equal or greater value, something that's compatible with the system? Oh, it's already in there?
It's in there.
If that language is in there, it's fine. I'm just telling county council that their list tends to be instructive, and it will not be, it is not a logical instruction to my IT department to be able to follow through on it. So
I think what we just want to make clear is that we have a time frame in which we want to accomplish a very specific set of goals, and whatever we need to do to work with your administration, the IT, the items on this list, but this is us getting this action moving forward, and I think if we communicate, we could probably accomplish what we would like to accomplish.
you are passing a budget ordinance that has all the money in there.
Sure.
So this is repetitive and redundant and repetitive and redundant, this ordinance.
Then why are we getting so much pushback from it?
You're not. I put it in the budget this year, but it is repetitive and redundant. Thank you.
Mark, Steve, you said my computer, I think you meant the county's.
The county, the group I supervise, I didn't, it was the collective my, I apologize.
Is there anybody else have public comment? Council? Mr. Kuset.
Just as a follow-up to what Mr. Barron had said, I think if you look on the second page, there is wiggle room there. It says equivalent or comparable in quality of performance. So while it does appear to be directive in nature, there is some flexibility within the ordinance that would allow them to use what they need.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a point to make.
Yes, Ms. Faryetta.
I just want to point out why we are even putting this together, is that years ago, we started this process by asking for upgrades, and it started during COVID. And then we had a resolution, and then we asked, and it was answered, and then we were told we couldn't do it. And so it's been a constant back and forth of, yes, we can, no, we can't. So when we put the last ordinance together, we were told, why are you using anybody else, and why are you putting out an RFP? Our company can do this. And so Vision Technologies came and they said, we could do everything you ask. Years ago, we were told, we can't do everything. They can't do everything. So there's some memory holes here, and so this is here today because we want it done. And while it might be promised to be done next year with a new council, this council's been trying to do it since 2020. And so I am going to be voting yes for this. I think we wrote it in such a way that yes, if any of these things don't work or don't fit, I believe Aileen Shafnisky has tried many times to work with the IT department to get answers on this. I believe Mr. Giovanni has, and it just needs to happen and get done, and as timely a way as possible.
Anybody else? Mr. Guafredo?
To that point of in a timely fashion, and it says in the ordinance under section 1 expeditiously, do we want to set a date to have this work complete by? So we can.
I don't know if you can. What if something that we want is not available? We have that with capital projects, with some things.
Most of these items are available on Amazon. Like, I don't think it's going to be that hard to get.
We don't, we're having a
We're talking,
discussion
yeah.
here.
Is it council's discussion? Go ahead, guys.
Listen, if council doesn't want to put a deadline on it, that's fine. I just want to have at least a conversation. Do we want to put a date on it? Because right now, that's very vague terminology.
I believe that we did try to discuss that when we put this together, and I don't think we want to lock in because if something's not available, but I do think that there should be some timeline set in terms of reports and where we are and status updates, because like waiting till we get around to it has brought us here.
Like, I
And
think
waiting
60
till all the new people come in to say, well, what we would like to see, this has been rolled down the road too many times. It's got to get done. It's got to get done.
Mr. Heckman?
I think I like the term report. I would report every 6 months. I don't know if that's too much or too little.
I was going to say done in 6 months, but sorry, we built buildings in 6 months. I think we can put an audio-video system together.
Well, it's government.
Unfortunately, that
problem.
excuse is, I'm growing less and less patient of that excuse.
I understand, I can tell. But I mean, no, I think that, look, in 6 months, if we have, well, there's no, the reason I guess I'm saying it too is I think you've got a pretty clear indication that we can pass this, and I think we have every right to pass it, just like I think we have every right to talk to the procurement office, even though we can't. I think that we're going to find out in 6 months then that it's probably nobody's moved on it. And then you can take whatever actions you want to do from that point forward. I mean, I'll vote for it. I think, though, I take Mr. Barron at his word that the administration is going to ignore it. But that's just my opinion. And we'll have to go from there, as myself and a solicitor have talked about.
My question would be, why aren't we putting a deadline on it then?
Well, I mean, I don't know with parts and, I mean.
Like I said, I can
concerned
look
about
up
a
these parts on
deadline.
Amazon.
I'm more into checkpoints. Where are we? I don't know. I'm going to defer to Mr. Giovanni if he has an opinion, because I didn't write this. He knows this stuff.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think if we put a deadline on it, a drop dead date, they're
Okay.
going to ignore it anyhow.
What would
Administration
you, may I ask him a question? Yes, Mr. President. What would you recommend as a drop dead date?
I'm good with 6 months.
Oh,
I'll give it
really?
Oh, yeah, I'll give it 6 months. Because it's already at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So you know nothing's going to happen anymore this year.
Right, absolutely.
So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens with the new, in January, what goes on. We need to see what's happening.
Okay.
6 months is a stretch. I like to see, hey, how about report in March? What's going on, the end of February?
See what an easygoing guy I am. I go 6 months for a
Yeah.
report. All right, no, I just wanted to get your opinion. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a couple questions.
Yes, Mr. Vinsky.
How did you assemble this list? Like, where did this come about?
We found a list somewhere.
What do you mean you found it somewhere?
That's all I know.
What does that mean?
I looked at the equipment. Somebody came up with a list of equipment. I looked at it and see, would it be doable? I said, yes.
Who
Now-
came up with the list? Doesn't that mean something? I mean, I don't know what any of this equipment does, but I'm hoping that the person who put this list together knows what this equipment does, and it's the right equipment for what you want to get done. From what I understand from Mr. Barron, he's already got this in the works with the audio-visual contract that we have, and that this is redundant, so I don't understand. Like, you're going to have to explain to me why we're doing this. I get it, you need this to get done. We have a right to do it. Should and ought we do it this way if the administration is already working towards this? Like, I don't understand, if we don't even know who made this list, how do we know these are the right things to do what it is that you want to get done in here?
I can tell you, Vision Technology put this list together.
Vision
I'm not going to tell you
Techno-
who, but I'm going to tell you they put it together.
So the people who we have a contract with put this together.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm just trying to comprehend where we're going with this. So Vision Technologies put this list together. We have a contract with Vision Technologies. It's already budgeted. Are you just enumerating what you want to have done?
Do you have an idea of what we want? Do you have an idea of what we want?
So is this just perfunctory?
No.
Because I just don't, I don't understand. We already have a contract with them. If they put this list together, why isn't it just included in the contract that we already have? Why are we voting?
Hey, they told you you can use Zoom on your screen. Did you do it? Can you use Zoom on your screen?
Yeah, I heard you.
No?
I have called in. Yeah, I can't use
Yeah,
Zoom on my
yeah,
screen. I
yeah.
got you. So is this going to get you all the things that you want? Is this a wish list?
I think it will. I would agree with Mr. Barron. The Canon lenses may be non-compatible, but it says compatible quality or performance to the following hardware. So it's their
If Vision
choice.
Technologies gave you this list, why would they give you equipment enumerated on this list that was incompatible with the things that they're currently?
You'd have to ask them. I have no idea.
There's just a lot of questions here that I don't understand. And it's not because I don't understand audio, video equipment. It's that I don't understand exactly why this list was made by the company that we have the contract with that may or may not be compatible with the things that we want to do.
Most of that hardware on that list will do what we want it to do. Most of that hardware.
All right. Okay.
Are you against this project?
It's not that I'm against it, it's that I think we're already doing it.
Well, you know, it's very interesting. They came by a few months ago and said, we got all this stuff and this all can get done. Nothing's moved forward.
Yeah, that's.
Not a damn thing's happened.
So you feel like this will move it forward because
If
you
you,
made this
sometimes
list?
you gotta push.
I'm just
the-
asking.
Yes,
Just asking.
sometimes you gotta push the cart to get the wheels to turn. If somebody tells me I have something for me, and they don't make it any effort to get it to me, I think they're stalling.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right.
You know, in other words, you know, in the old days, when they played basketball before they had a 24-second clock, you can stay on the half-court side for 8 minutes, not shoot, and win the game 2-0. That's the same thing. I'm proud to be 69 years old.
So-
Go ahead,
I'm
Mr.
like,
Heckman.
so you're telling me that when I come in next year and give my controller's report to you, I could do it via Zoom?
Oh, you won't be giving it to me.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Sure about that?
Go ahead, Mr. Heckman.
You shooting from the paint?
Oh, yeah, I was shooting from the paint.
Yeah, why not, right?
I think part of it too is, look, I don't know. I'm deferring to some, one of the great things about council is you get people from diverse backgrounds. It's not just one person making all the decisions. The executive branch is one person, and everybody else goes down from there. Here, you've got 9 people, and they all come from diverse backgrounds and different things. I think what you said, I agree. They came in and said, we can do this. We could have done it. So why wasn't it done? And I think, you know, the question, we were told a couple times by a few people, it can't be done. It can't be done. And the company sort of disputed that. The boss came in and said, yeah, we could have done it. We can do it. So there was a disjointed message there between the administration officials that talked to us and the company. And I think he's just trying to clarify the situation. It gives out, in 6 months, somebody's going to have to say something. So I don't know if it'll pass muster. I don't know if they'll sue us. I don't know what'll happen, but neither thing bothers me.
So that conversation that I had with that gentleman here, and when, what's it called, Vision, was his name Mark?
A few months ago.
Yeah, a few months ago, I came here and I said, you know, why didn't we have this X, Y, Z? This is what came out of that meeting. And this is the X, Y, Z that we needed to get us where you want to be next year for this council.
And after that meeting.
Not you, we want.
Excuse me. After that meeting, I had a conversation with Mark. I called him directly, and we talked. And I said, listen, all we want is a hybrid room. We got a $580 million budget, and we don't even have a hybrid chamber. Bushkill Township has a $2 million budget, and you ought to see their hybrid
Yeah.
chamber.
I understand
Well, that's
municipalities
where we're at, and now they're dragging it. I think we should vote for this ordinance
to
to
make a
push it
motion.
forward.
Hold on a second. We're still having discussion. Anybody else? Mr. Kusak, and then I'll let you go with your motion.
Yeah, just for your reference, the Four Corners offense was perfected by Dean Smith at North Carolina.
Yeah, but we
And
used to Easton.
and I look forward to seeing Mr. Kraft in high definition next year.
Oh, that's tough. That's very funny. Okay.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to make an amendment to state a deadline of June 1st, 2024, with monthly updates during a given committee, which I haven't yet deemed to be most apt. Whichever committee would make most relevance.
Is it
And I'll second
technology?
Technology committee.
Technology committee, there you
Yeah, we have one.
Say that again.
go. Deadline of June 1st, 2024, instead of expeditiously and in good faith, with monthly updates. In Technology?
Yep.
Technology committee.
Hold on a second.
You're adding that to the end of section 1
I'm striking expeditiously and in good faith.
and then adding that statement.
Yes.
Okay.
So before we go any further, I want to read that so everybody understands it. All right, we won't.
So if they want it done by
June,
June 1st, 2024, with monthly updates at a committee meeting to be determined.
is there a second?
Second.
Let's vote on the amendment. Unless there's more discussion on this. Okay, shoot.
Mr. Gofredo?
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner?
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Now we're voting on, are there any other amendments anybody wants to add to it? Then let's vote on it as amended. Unless there's more discussion. There's not? So we're going to vote for it as amended.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner?
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman? Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Okay. Whew. Is there any other old business to discuss?
I'd like to make a motion to untable the,
The Blue Scope Construction.
thank you. Resolution, to approve a contract with Blue Scope Construction Incorporated.
Nice.
And that's for Louise Moore Park?
Yep.
Correct.
You want to untable it?
I'd like to make a motion to untable it.
Second.
Okay, it's off the table. Discussion?
We have to take it off the table before this.
Oh, vote for it.
Yeah.
I told you I'm not here.
You're doing fine.
You're still on the clock.
Mr. Gofredo?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner?
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Okay. Discuss. The discussion on the resolution. Mr. Valfredo, you untabled. Let me hear what you got to say.
We had a representative from, I believe it was from Blue Scope, correct?
Yes.
Yes, here at our committee meeting, Capital Projects Committee meeting. And, although I'm still not satisfied with how our bidding process is going, I do recognize the need. I do recognize the fact that Blue Scope went out of their way to involve local contractors to do the work that before we didn't have a named contractors for. It was kind of open-ended. So I appreciate the effort, and I'd like to support this in order to get the new maintenance building at Louise Moore Park underway.
All right, Mr. Valfredo, we're going to give you a resolution to read for the record. You have it?
Yep.
Please read that for the record, and then we will call for a vote unless we have more discussion. Yes, go for it.
Whereas Northampton County Administrative Code, Article 13, Procurement and Disposition of County Property, Section 13.15, Contracts and Agreements, requires approval of a county council for any contract. I don't need to read all that. Whereas on October 13th, 2023, the Northampton County Council received a request from the county executive for county council to adopt a resolution approving a contract in the amount of $2,199,108 with Blue Scope Construction Incorporated for a new parks maintenance building at Louise Moore Park. Now therefore be resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county exec as set forth in the attached documentation to approve a contract with Blue Scope Construction, Inc.
No discussion?
I have one.
Yes.
I wasn't here, but I watched it on YouTube in high definition. And anyway, I listened to how it was in, and then they didn't take it because it wasn't, and they thought it would be a better one. And we went through the state, I believe in that.
Yes.
I'm still concerned. I'm going to support it because I believe it has to get done, and I think he made a good point about making it done. It's obvious we need it. But I'm going to be addressing at some point what's been brought up about procurement and the contracts, because I'm still concerned. I think the RCO is a good mechanism for safety, but I think there's certain parts of it that conflict with the local labor ordinance. And I don't think that they can both exist as they're written. So I don't know what has to be done, but I don't know, this year it probably won't happen, but next year, who knows what people think, but I know that's something I have to pursue I still think there are more local people that would bid on these projects. I can't believe at this point after COVID that it's not enough money, so we've got to go across the country or across the state. We may have to modify some of the things in the RCO to adjust for the fact that we, at the end of the day, we want local taxpayers benefiting from local jobs. I had to have that fight for a long time once, and as far as people say about labor and unions, they supported me 100%. They said, you're not an organizer, we are. Let us worry about that, but the local people should get it. So I'm concerned that local people may not be getting as many jobs as they should. So I know I'll have a fight on my hands, but I just wanted to say that. But I'll support your thing tonight.
Anybody else? Call for a vote, please.
Mr. Gofredo?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner?
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky?
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
New business. Introduction of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance providing for the real estate tax millage rate in the county of Northampton for the year 2024. Can I have a sponsor for this ordinance?
I will.
Second.
I don't know.
Okay. We will have a public hearing on December 7th meeting. Introduction of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending the 2023 Northampton County Council budget, countywide salaries, fringe benefits, community and economic development, fiscal affairs, balancing of the budget, administration, emergency management, coroner, human services, homeless assistance, development fund, grants, children and youth families, health choices, mental health, developmental programs, early intervention, drug, alcohol, opioid settlement. Sponsor.
Oh,
And Mr. Cusack seconds. We will have a public hearing to debate the possible vote on this December 7th, 2023. Introduction of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Northampton County Ordinance Number 446-2006, also known as Ordinance Providing for Rules and Regulations for Northampton County Council Meeting. Mr. Heckman will be a sponsor. You're going to?
And I'll second.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. President, we know we're going to discuss it down the road, but I'd ask people to please read it. The portion that's changed or underlined. What we had, I think, was very good. In fact, the person who wrote it is in the room. I just decided to, I looked at parts where I thought maybe we've been a little funky over the last 3 years, and I wanted to beef up a few parts. But overall, it doesn't really change it that much, just a few points. Thank you. That's all I wanted to add. So read it, please.
Okay. Call for a vote? No, we haven't.
no, it's not a vote.
That's just,
Oh, I'm sorry, we're done. I'm out of here.
I did a commercial.
December 7th meeting. Confirmation of the county exec's appointment, reappointment resolution, jail advisory, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, Northampton County Housing Development Corporation Board, Personnel Commission, Retirement Board, Revenue Appeals Board. Ms. Varyu Hefner, introduce the resolution, please.
Resolved by Northampton County Council that the following individuals shall be confirmed in their appointments/reappointments as indicated hereafter. Jail Advisory Board, reappointment Paul Patrick, Easton, Pennsylvania, reappointment Joshua Robinson, Easton, Pennsylvania, and reappointment Jody Ruggiero, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, term to expire 12/31/25. Well, the starting is not on here, the starting appointment date. Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, reappointment elected official Rachel Leone, Bethlehem, PA, term to expire 12/31/24. Northampton County Housing Development Corporation Board, appointment Tina Smith, Nazareth, PA, term to expire 12/31/27. Personnel Commission, reappointment Marvin Boyer, Easton, PA, and Christy Gessner, Easton, PA, also reappointment, term to expire 12/31/25. Retirement Board appointment, Patricia A. Strunk, Nazareth, PA, and the reappointment of Thomas Guth, Easton, PA, term to expire 12/31/25. Revenue Appeals Board reappointment, Duran Hammond, Bethlehem, PA, 12/31/25, term expiration. All of these were discussed yesterday at the Personnel Committee. It was stated that Ms. Strunk is to replace Mr. Seyfried as the retiree representative, as Mr. Seyfried has chosen to step down at this time.
Yes.
After many years of grateful service.
Mr. Kusak.
Yep, the question I had raised was regarding Tina, she left here. I guess the question I had is she on by the statute or as part of the structure of the housing? Or is that just an appointment?
So, I'm sorry. The bylaws require an administration appointment
Okay.
to that board.
Yeah, it wasn't clear yesterday, so thank
And
you.
the current members are Michelle Roy, who is a Housing Authority Board member, Jason Vanderberg, and who is also a Housing Authority Board member, and who else? Gwen Didden, the Executive Director.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the clarification, Mr. McClure. Any other discussion? Call for vote?
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Consideration of the reclassification of positions at District Attorney's Office. Mr. Barr, you have no, please introduce the resolution.
It is hereby resolved by Northampton County Council that one position of Assistant District Attorney 1, pay grade CE GR3 1-A, salary $65,535 in the Office of the District Attorney shall be upgraded to the position of Assistant District Attorney 1, pay grade CE GR3 3-C, salary $71,565, effective the 17th day of November 2023. It is further resolved by Northampton County Council that one position of Chief Deputy District Attorney, pay grade CEGR 4-D, salary $89,905 in the position of the District Attorney shall be upgraded to the position of Chief Deputy District Attorney, pay grade CEGR 7-G, salary $102,597, effective the 17th day of November 2023. It is further resolved by Northampton County Council that one position of Chief Deputy District Attorney, pay grade CEGR 7-G, salary $102,597 in the Office of the District Attorney shall be upgraded to the position of Chief Deputy District Attorney, pay grade CEGR 9-I, salary $112,092, effective the 7th day of November 2023. This also was discussed during budget hearings and yesterday at personnel. Mr. Houck is here if we have any further questions. Thank you for your patience in being here tonight, sir.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Houck? Except you already have the money in budget, you can do this.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for? None? No discussion? Let's call for a vote for Mr. Houck and get him out of here.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky. Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Congratulations, Mr. Houck.
Thank you. May I have 1 second?
You most certainly can.
For those of you moving on, I just wanted to thank you for your service to the county. You've done a great job. For those of you staying, keep your head on a swivel, right? But thank you. Thank you for everything. You've been very honest.
Thank you.
Thank
your
you, sir,
service.
for your service. Thank you for being here.
Consideration of a resolution application for acceptance of funds through local share account statewide. Ms. Varya Hefner, would you read that for us, please? Because Mr. Heckman says he's losing his voice.
Okay.
Want me to read it?
Nah. Now therefore be it resolved, County of Northampton hereby approves submitting a request for statewide LSA program grant in the amount of $618,918.80 from the CFA to be used for the purchase of FDMA to TDMA conversion for existing P25 system to standalone GTR 8000 base stations, 2 site antenna system, 2000 home user radio licenses for voice communications, 3,000 visitor user radio licenses for voice communications, tower assessments, structural analysis, and tower make ready to support the P25 law enforcement radio network. Be it further resolved that the Council of Northampton County does hereby designate the county executive to execute all documents and agreements between the County of Northampton and the Commonwealth Financing Authority to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grant. This was addressed yesterday in the Finance Committee meeting. This is permission to write the grant.
Discussion. Can we call for a vote?
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo. Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Consideration of an Administrative Code Article 13 Contract Amended Resolution, Wilmer R. Schultz Incorporated. Ms. Zirinsky, would you please read that for us, because Mr. Heckman don't have a voice?
Sure.
Thank you. One of the last things you get to do.
Part of it.
The last thing.
One of the last.
Yeah, we got 2 more meetings.
I may not be
All
here.
right. Whereas on June 26, 2023, the Northampton County Council adopted Resolution Number 77-2023 endorsing a contract in the amount of $340,200 with Wilmer R. Schultz for the courthouse exterior wall and steps project with an estimated timeframe of 105 consecutive days for completion. And whereas on November 13, 2023, the Northampton County Council received a request from the county executive for county council to adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the contract with Wilmer R. Schultz to increase the total expenditure to $384,430.60. Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve the contract amendment.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Discussion? Call for the vote.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Buster's Lowe's.
Tonight, council wanted to give this honor and recognition to Kevin Lott for his commitment to public service as a member of Northampton County Council. Congratulations. Thank you for your deliberation, guidance, always with the best interest citizens of Northampton County in mind from 2018 to 2023. I would just like to recognize and thank Kevin for his service. We met at Lafayette, and I always cherished things he had to say, and I'm sorry he's not here to get that.
Mr. President,
Yes.
he's doing a valuable service. I believe he's protecting Mr. Kraft in the deep waters off the islands so that Mr. Kraft gets here safely.
Okay.
It's very funny. Will he
Okay.
not be here in December, though?
No, they're going to be diving.
No, will Kevin not be here in December?
We don't know where he's been. You know, he goes on vacation then, you know.
He may be calling in, he may not. He's not going to be present.
Council committee reports.
I got nothing.
Yesterday, the Personnel and Finance Committees met, and the fruits of our labor were discussed here. I'm just opening up the option to have a governance committee in December at our meeting. Just stay tuned. I'm hoping we don't have to, but I believe that if there's more information that comes from the state Department of State, that we should entertain that, and I believe that there's another matter that may need to be addressed prior to the end of the year.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, good.
Council liaison reports. Clerk.
Just a reminder, Tuesday at 4:30 will be the budget amendment meeting where we'll discuss the council's budget amendments.
Solicitors.
Bring your books.
Oh, wait, I had a liaison
Bring
report.
your
I'm sorry, did I miss that?
Yes, you can give it
Well,
now.
he was saying something, he wanted to say something.
Okay, give your liaison report.
I'll give the report, but he had something to say. I met, Discover Lehigh Valley had their annual meeting, and last week on election morning, discussed the changes that have been made to the branding as well as the fiscal report. the Lehigh County still continues to receive more money per occupancy, and that we're in a good place. And the changes that have been done there with personnel and ideas just seem to be continuing to support the valley. The best committee and group ever, the General Purpose Authority, met this Tuesday morning to discuss the bridge statuses. I believe several bridges that were waiting for final approval were given such, and I believe that there are 2 bridges left to be completed, and they will probably be completed by the end of next year due to design issues, utility relocation, and delays due to stream restrictions. Correct? Potentially. Can't start till the river goes down.
May I ask you a question?
You can.
Would that mean then that the 2, when they're finished, that's it? They're all done?
Yep, we moved the others. I think there was one that, I might be missing one that might have needed some punch list items for a final acceptance, but it was in substantial completion. These are the 2 really outlying, so a lot of progress has been made, and it's been really great. Mr. Ameali's been really excellent on this, as well as the Benish Company in getting the project moving and done. Super awesome.
No other reports? Well, before we adjourn, I would just like to take a moment to thank the members of this council for your support for me the last couple of weeks. My family's going through a trying time right now,
I'm sorry.
and I wish you all the best luck. And with that, I adjourn.
So I just wanted to say,